What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Brand podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about why some of those Etsy experts probably not going to like me too much, or Chris. I put in the title there, they're probably going to hate us. And, I don't know if they're going to say it to our face or not. Probably not. But they're definitely not going to probably agree. And what I want to do here today is not necessarily call anybody out, but what I want to do is I want to bring this to the attention. So this way here, we can, shout it from the rooftops for anyone that can, that can hear us. And, we'll actually be able to help them moving forward, and especially moving into Q4, because right now in Q4, there's some things that we're going to cover here that you won't be able to do if you follow the other strategy or the other method that you might be hearing out there on the old internet. All right. So what we want to do is we want to show you like what is being said out there, what we don't agree with, why we don't agree with it, and really our 5 different things that come from doing it the way that we recommend doing it and the way that we're currently doing it. So, Chris, with that all being said, I know we don't want to create any enemies out there, but we might, because we, we're not agreeing with the method of, the spaghetti at the wall. Let's just kind of throw it out there. I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think we've already gone with alternate universe Chris, right? Shaved head Chris is evil Chris. I think we'll just go with that. And so I'm not worried about creating some enemies if we are in the right and we're not doing it intentionally, right? And that's something I felt very vindicated over the last few weeks as we've heard Etsy CEO come out and talk about how their algorithm actually works and how it'll be working in the future and all of those kinds of things, right? And it's basically been exactly what you and I have been saying because we took the time to read through the documents. And so as long as we're pointing people in the right direction and we think that we're doing the right thing based on all of the information that we have, if somebody wants to be my enemy, fine. I don't have any qualms about that, right? I'm not going out to call somebody out. I'm saying, look, this is the way we think things should be done based on everything that we know. That's pretty much it. But a lot of the quote unquote experts are probably going to hate us for what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. Okay. So just want to let you guys know also, we've got some other breaking news. Just hot off the press. Chris actually just shared it with me and didn't share it in its entirety because we have a video clip that we're going to share later. Another one from Josh Silverman that talks about some updates, and one of them being search. So we've got a little bit more info there. So stay tuned for that. All right. So with that all being said, I want to know in the comments right now, are you brand new? And is this your first Q4 that we're heading into? Your first season? Let us know in the comments if this is your first season and if this is your first Q1. Let us know. All right. So with that all being said, Chris, what are we talking about here? Like, what are we talking about? Like, why are our Etsy experts out there going to not like us so much? Well, you might have noticed that on YouTube, there's a lot of videos that talk about one product. And I'm just going to kind of throw this thing up here. And let's say I was selling this giant water bottle, and maybe these had been selling, and maybe someone struck gold, and maybe they, they're selling that thing and they're making $15,000 revenue per month. And they're like, hey, sell these 15 grand. And then it doesn't even matter the niche. It's just like, oh, you found something else. Okay, cool. Here's another water bottle, but now we're talking about a completely different niche, right? Like maybe it's bass fishing, and then maybe you find out that there's another niche that's selling, and maybe it is I don't know, it's maybe a gardener. So now we're into gardening, right? Gardening, okay, do that one too. Okay, that's the model. It's like, we don't care what the niche is. We just want to find products that are selling, and we just want to take them and add them into our shop, and then from there you want to take all those products and just keep building them things out, right? Just keep, it doesn't matter the niche. That's our big hang up there. And you're going to see here in a second when we get into these 5 reasons why you should be focusing on one niche, because we're not just looking at Q4. Okay. We're not just looking at Q4. We're looking at January. We're looking at spring. We're looking at summer, because what we're doing is we're building momentum off of what we're going to be able to capitalize on Q4. But we're doing it in a way because we're focusing on a niche or niches that are tied together. All right. So the whole throw spaghetti at the wall, approach, we've never been a fan of that, because here's why. Here's why we have never been a fan of that. We've built other businesses outside of Etsy. We understand business as far as, okay, if I can get someone to buy a product, wouldn't I want to get them to buy more at the same time? And wouldn't I maybe want to sell them something in the future? Maybe again in 3 months, maybe again in a year. Wouldn't I want that? Of course I would, because that's how a business should be run, and that's how you build a very, very stable business and not just a one-off, right? So we've done this in other niches. We've done it on other platforms. My first dabble with e-commerce was in Amazon. I built a couple of brands there. One of them we sold about 4.5 years ago now. So I've been at this a while. I understand that building a brand, okay, takes time, but if you do it properly and you set yourself up, with products that a customer can buy more of, we increase the cart value. And then from there, we also can sell them more things in the future because we already know that they're interested in bass fishing or they're interested in gardening, right? We know that. But if we don't have that and we're just trying to go after products every single time that you're trying to sell something, you're trying to, scratch off that lottery ticket, right? Or the scratch off at the QT or whatever your convenience store is, right? That's not what we want to do. Okay. So I want to know, and it's okay if you have, there's a lot of people that have. I'm just curious, how many of you started with I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks? And I'm just curious if you've done that. And if you have, it's okay. I really want you to see the power in what we're about to share with you. If you're new here, you're going to see it for the first time. If you're not, you're going to hear it again. And the thing is I think when we explain this more than once, sometimes it takes one thing that we describe to click. And then you're like, I get it. Okay. We're all about the long game, not the short game. Okay. Now, can we capitalize on the short game? Sure. But we're also going to be banking for when we are playing the long game. Okay. So with that all being said, we do have 5 things that we want to share with you. So the experts are saying, just sell this thing because it's selling. That's it. I don't care the niche. You can have 25 niches in your shop. And if you're watching this for the first time, you're like, Scott, you're saying niche wrong. I'm here to tell you, riches are in the niches. That's what I say. And yes, I know people say niches. Sure. You can say that. You can say, nicho, you can do that. You can do nacho, whatever you want to do. It's niche for me. So Chris, before we get into these 5 reasons why you should be focusing on one niche, and that is the big thing that a lot of the experts are saying that you shouldn't do. And anything you want to say there before we get rocking and rolling here?
Yeah. Scott, do you remember the game 2 Truths and a Lie?
I do, vaguely.
They use it a lot at like corporate retreats as an icebreaker, right? This in my mind is a good case of 2 truths and a lie, or a misconception, just to be a little bit more generous about it, right? The people who are saying you should just launch as many products as possible. There's 2 grains of truth in there, and then there's a big misconception, right? The 2 grains of truth are 5 years ago, you could do it. And the easiest way to scale up on Etsy, because there wasn't a lot of competition from other sellers, was to just launch as many things as possible, because the search was not saturated. There was more demand, more people looking for products than there were products on the platform. That has changed significantly over the last few years. Number 2 is more products equals more chances to sell, generally speaking, right? Yes, the more things you have in your store, the more potential opportunities you have to sell. If you're fishing and you have 3 fishing rods, you've tripled, theoretically, the number of chances that you have to catch a fish. But I think where the biggest misconception here comes in, Scott, is that they say, okay, even though more competition has come in, even though Etsy themselves has said that they're moving away from that and they're starting to favor brands, they're moving to some other ranking factors in search, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. That Etsy buyers, they don't care. They're just looking for a product and they're never going to come back. And we know from Etsy's data that that's not accurate, but we also know from the Etsy buyer survey that that's not accurate, right? 81% of Etsy buyers said that they are coming back again and again to try to buy from the same shop. And the more frequently they purchase, the more likely they are to purchase and repurchase from the same shop. And that's something you take away, you cut the legs out of if you don't have a niche-based approach. If they come in and they came in to buy some fishing stuff and all of they see is lacrosse or beach volleyball stuff across the top of the thing, they're immediately going to go back to Etsy search results and you lose that potential opportunity. So it's not to say, Scott, that that approach never worked and that it has not worked for some people.
True.
But it's extremely short-sighted, especially as Etsy moves away from an immediate purchase environment and into a frequent and recurring purchase environment, which is really what they're pushing towards these days.
Yeah. Hey, and before we do get rocking and rolling here, can you guys give us a little heads up here? Are our mic audios good? We had a couple people say last time that the audio levels, like Chris was either low or I was high or vice versa. We just want to make sure that we get these dialed in. Give us a thumbs up or let us know Chris is too low or too high or Scott's lower, or just let us know in the comments. We want to get that right. It seems like whenever we go live, we get sounds good for me, Joseph says. All right, that's one. And we do have a lot of people at first. Okay. Schiller says audio's good. Audio's good. Okay, cool. Good. That's all we needed to know. Thank you so much for letting us know. Bailey, thank you so much. All right. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So let's get rocking and rolling, Chris. All right. So the very first way, like we said, we are going to talk about the 5 reasons why you should be focusing on a niche. Okay. Number 1 is, like I just said a minute ago, is we want to increase the order size. Okay. Would you rather someone come into your shop and you've got one thing that they can buy and you're like, here it is, one thing? Because maybe you do sell in all of these other niches, but they're not related to that. So they're not interested in that. But let's say that you sell this and something else that would go along with this. Let's just say that they're into running, right? And they're buying this. Well, maybe you have a running shirt in there that has something that is about like your love for running, right? I'm just using that as an example, right? And then, or maybe then there's also in there a smaller one of these. Okay, cool. Then maybe there's, instead of just a t-shirt, there's a sweatshirt, or maybe then there's a candle in there. That's a good gift for someone who's a runner. Okay. So what we're looking at here is how can I get someone to enter my store? Okay. So think about brick and mortar and walk out with not necessarily what they showed up for, but walk out with more because they saw it was there and it was related. So we can take an order that this might make this might be a $25 sale, but if I can get them to buy other things and get that to $75 or $100, why wouldn't I want to do that? Versus I'm going to throw up a whole bunch of products and a whole bunch of different niches and try to just get more of a mass appeal. And I can't do any, and you're going to see here another one of the reasons why we're doing this, right? Because there's so much more that we can do later after the sale. But this is like your initial sale. So you're going to get all this traffic coming in on Q4. So what we want to do is we want to take that traffic and we want to show them what they came in for, but then we also want to show them all these other things that potentially they might want to add to their cart. If they're giving it as a gift, someone comes in and they're like, oh, this is perfect for my son who loves running. He's going to run his first marathon. So then you have something on here that represents your first marathon. And then there's probably going to be a shirt that has something about your first marathon. And then maybe there's going to be, I don't know, something on the wall that you can hang. Okay. So there's a poster, it could be a little banner, anything, right? It could be one of those little pennant signs, right? That you see that they hang up in for sports things, right? So there's all of these things that now we're thinking of, okay, we have a customer that is buying a gift for someone who's an avid runner. What are some other gifts that they might want to throw in there as a bundle that they would give to this person? Okay. That's one way of looking at it, or the runner themselves. Okay. So that's what we're looking at here. We want to see how can we increase the order size, okay, by including more products that one person can buy. Okay. And that's the big one here. All right. And it's a shift in that mind. If you've been thinking, because you've been seeing these YouTube, experts saying, just find that product and sell it, and then find another one that's a hot product and sell that, and another one and another one and another one, and then just throw a whole bunch up there and see what sticks.
Another one.
To me, that's a waste of time. Okay. Because you might get one or two that might hit short term, but then what do you do after the fact? Right? Nothing, because then you're going to have all this competition coming in and it's going to take those. And so that one day of, or that 1 month of great sales or whatever, then now all of a sudden that goes away. Now, what do you got? You got nothing left. You're going to see here in a second, another one of the ways the 5 ways why we're doing this, it's going to compound on itself. It's going to build on itself. All right. But the first thing I wanted to share with you is to increase the order size. So right now I want you to be thinking Q4, is there a niche that you're focusing on that you can build out even a small product bundle, a product line that customer can add to their cart to bring that cart value up? All right. So that would be one thing that I would want to be focusing on. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you said order size specifically, but I don't think it's just about order size. It's about size and frequency, right? And I think that is the key. If we can improve customer retention, meaning we get somebody to come back just 5%, we can increase profits 30 to 90%. And I know that's a big range because it depends on the business, but let's just take that number 30%, Scott. If we were just able to get people to come back 5% more than they are right now, we would increase our profits a minimum of 30%. How do we do that? We give them things that they would want to buy. What's the easiest way to do that? To make sure that everything in our shop appeals to that same customer. If it's filled with a lot of different garbage, not only do we lose the benefit of the potential increase in order size when they're buying gifts for other people, but we lose that order frequency. And we know, based on looking at the data, the average Etsy customer makes about 5 purchases a year. Now that skews kind of one way or the other. So that number can be a little misleading because there's a lot of people who make 1, and then a lot of people who make 1 a month or more. But when we start to think about it that way, it's not just about the overall order size, although that is a nice side benefit. We also are able to increase the frequency with which people come back and order. And I think that's the thing a lot of people miss is they say, okay, I need to spend more on ads to get more sales, or I just need to rank a little bit better in Etsy search to get more sales. And if you are doing this the right way, you are using the niche-based approach, you actually don't have to launch more products. You don't need to call in DJ Khaled and launch another one, right? You don't have to keep doing that. You don't have to stay on that flywheel because everything in your shop appeals to those same customers. And immediately when they come back to Etsy, they're looking at your shop, or they're getting to know you through some of the other methods that we'll be talking about. And it's an opportunity for them to come back and buy. You get to take yourself out a little bit of that flywheel of, I need to spend more on ads, or I need to spend more time creating listings so that I can rank differently in search, or I need to make all of these little tweaks. You can stay a lot more sane and make a lot more money just by making sure that everything appeals to that same customer when they come into your shop.
Yeah. Also, guys, if you have any questions on this along the way, drop them in the comments. We will star them and we will come back to them and we'll answer them at the end of this segment. If you're just joining us, we are going to be talking about a few other things as well today. We have breaking news coming in, a big update that Josh Silverman just announced. But this one here, I just wanted to pull this up real quick. Kate the Mama, I have $100 a day budget, which is my max, but it doesn't usually pass maybe $5. The reason why I'm bringing this up, which doesn't have anything to do with what we just talked about, but we are going to be talking about some Etsy ad stuff. But I will say this right now, just really quickly, and this is why when we're doing our research on our products, we want to make sure that we have in-demand products. That could be a demand issue. We'll talk more about that later. So if you're wondering, how do you find products that people are wanting, that would want to buy together, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So I just wanted to bring that up. But if you do have questions, drop them in there. We'll star them and we'll come back to them later. All right, cool. We got some more to move through here. So let's go ahead and get to our next one here. Okay. So Chris brought up a great point, right? Like, it's not just about the order size, it's about order frequency. So frequency, what that means to me is someone's going to come back to buy, right? They're going to come back. But how are they going to remember to come back? Are they just going to go, oh, I really like that store and I'm going to go? It's not like you're a big name brand right now. There's some cool things that can happen. Like if someone comes in and they favorite your shop, there's a good chance they're probably going to get notifications when you have something going on in your shop. If you upload some things, if you have a sale running, they might get some notifications, but then again, they still have to see it in their notifications. Or you may just pop up in their search now with something related because you've shown interest. So all of that stuff is great. But what you can do and you can control is email. Okay. And that's my second thing as far as one of my 5 reasons why you should start focusing on a niche, because we want to start building a list as soon as possible. And if you are brand new to our channel and you're thinking to yourself, Scott, Etsy's made it clear you cannot collect emails. And I would say you're not correct. you're not right. You might be right in a sense that you cannot take their email that came in from an order and you cannot just send an email. That is true. Etsy said you cannot just take an email and then just send them an email. Can't do that. Okay. But what you can do is get their permission. And that's the big thing here. Right. And now coming into Q4, okay, we're going to have a lot of opportunities to ask them to join our email list. Okay. Because we're going to have more customers coming in the door. So now is the time to get that ready. Now, could we do this if we were just selling a one-off product? No, why would you? Right? You collect the email and you're like, cool, I collected an email from my customer, but this customer bought a bass fishing mug, and this person bought one for gardening, and this one bought one for, fill in the blank. It's not a concentrated email list. But if people are going to join our email list and we are focused on one niche, now guess what? We can communicate. We have a sales, a traffic channel that we can now leverage. Okay. And we're going to get more into that here as we move through this, because this is a big piece. All right. And again, the Etsy experts out there are not saying this. They're saying just find the next product, right? Just go after volume, go after that one product that's selling 15 grand that everyone else is going to see. And then all of a sudden, everyone's going to sell the same darn thing, right? What we're doing is we're building a business. That's the difference. Okay. That's where the rub is for us, is like, you're not teaching people how to build a business. You're just teaching people how to sell a one-off product. Right. And really the success rate on that is very, very low, because once someone does it, and then you're going to see someone else does it, and then all of a sudden you're going to have all this competition. And the only thing that separates you is price. And we don't want to really compete on price. Okay. Now, building the email list. We've done a lot on this channel. You can go through some of our past videos where we talk about it, some of our live streams. We do talk a lot about email. If you would like our email guide, we have a playbook. All right. And we put that together because it's our marketing playbook, our email marketing playbook. It also shows how we build a list externally, not just within Etsy. But if you would like a copy of that, in the comments, just put email. Okay. Email, put that in the comments, and we'll make sure that we send you that guide. It's completely free. Okay. It's kind of like our playbook. All right. Now, building the email list, how would you do it? I'm going to give you the way that you should be doing it in the very, very beginning, and the least amount of resistance. They're going to give you permission. Here's how you do it. You want to create what we call a landing page. This is a page that someone would go to, like a web page, where it would say, join our, and we always like to call ours a VIP club, where someone could come in, they can get a discount immediately, and then they can also get future discounts, and you can also maybe run some giveaways, exclusive launch deals, like things like that. They're a VIP. Now, could you do a VIP list for the one-off mug? Probably not. Would someone want to get 25% off their first order? Yes, but you're not going to sell them anything after that, probably, right? So that's why, again, this is why we want to focus on that one niche. So what we do is we build that landing page, and we build that landing page in Everbee email. So if you're not using Everbee, I would definitely recommend using Everbee. Little shameless plug here. We do use it. We are an affiliate for them. You will buy us a cup of coffee if you go through our link and you upgrade to the growth plan. If you'd like to try it for free, head on over to brandcreators.com/Everbee. Once again, that's brandcreators.com/Everbee. Again, little shameless plug, but we use it every day. So what you do is you go there, you build this landing page. Okay. You build this one page and it basically says, join our VIP list, all this stuff, right? Enter your name and email address. They're giving you permission. That's the key there, right? Then what we do is we take that link and we buy a domain name. So a domain name would be an easier name. So it would be like, my gardening or gardening life would be your name of your business. I would go gardeninglifevip.com. I would buy that domain name. And then from there, I would forward it to the long link that Everbee is going to give you. Okay. It's a shortener in a sense, but it's easier to remember. All right. From there, and you can do that right at GoDaddy, you can get a domain name for like $10. Okay. So from there, okay, what we're doing is we're going to put that in our banner. We're going to put it in an image slot. We're going to put it in our description. We're going to advertise our VIP club. But the one thing that you can do with all these customers that are now coming in the door, okay, you're going to be able to send out one message through your Etsy account. Okay. That's your generic one that goes to all your customers. Doesn't matter what product they buy. So it's a very generic message. It's, hey, this is Scott. I just want to thank you so much for your recent purchase and supporting our small family business. We're busy at work, fulfilling orders, and yours is going to be one of them. We're going to get it shipped out as soon as possible. Oh, and while I have you, I'd like to invite you to join our VIP exclusive list. If you're on this, you get exclusive discounts, you get launch specials, you get entered into our monthly giveaways, like whatever you're going to do, right? Go here. And then you put the link there. That's it. So all your customers would get that email and then they are going to be able to click on that link, go to that page and give permission to send them emails. You see how that works? You see how powerful that is? Now that you have them on your email list, guess what? We don't have to wait for them to think, oh, yeah, I remember, Gardening Life brand. I remember that. No, they don't have to, because guess what? They're going to get an email from us saying, hey, we just launched this new gardener lover's apron. We had a bunch of people ask for an apron, so we decided to create one. Go here to check it out. And that's it. So now we're front of mind. But if we were selling a one-off mug, could we do this? No. And we wouldn't want to. Okay. So that's the power of email. All right. And we're going to get into the next one, which is going to build on this. But Chris, anything you want to add to, you should be building the email list. And this is another reason why you should be focusing on one niche.
Yeah, and I think you could go on this rant with me now, but say it with me, Scott. E-commerce, the single biggest return on investment marketing activity that you can do is send email, right? Somewhere between 38 and 72 to 1. So for every dollar we're putting in, we're getting $38 up to $72 back in terms of return on investment. This is something people think about outside of the Etsy ecosystem. When people think about building their Shopify website or setting up a WooCommerce store or doing anything that's not a platform-based e-commerce approach, they immediately say, hey, I need to have an email list. I want to get those abandoned carts. I want to get some of those customers. And maybe I'll send them an email to buy something when we launch something new, yada, 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 yada. For whatever reason, Scott, when people use a marketplace first approach, like getting started on Etsy, which is a great way to get started, they forget about the outside stuff, right? And one of the things that you and I talked about was the reliance on that internal traffic, and why we like being a niche-based store is that we can sell more to those same people, right? They're going to come back immediately and buy from us. We also can get out of that flywheel of, I need to launch more products to have more potential traffic to come in. Email gives us both of those things. It gives us the highest likelihood to convert for our customers. And it creates that connection to say, hey, remember that really cool thing that you bought from me for your dad for Christmas? You want to buy something else cool for your dad? We have that too. And you know that he's going to love it because he loved the last thing that we have. And everything that we sell is in that same line or that same niche. And I think where people fall off on this is they say, oh, Etsy does not allow email. They don't encourage email. They tell you you can't do it. And you covered that at length. You said, look, you can't just scrape people's emails. You can't do that anywhere and get away with it, right? Technically, it's legal in the US in most places to just start randomly emailing people, but you never want to do that. We get people to opt in using either the QR code that Everbee gives us or the link to the landing page that we can create. We should be doing both of those, not one or the other necessarily. And that lets people make the choice to opt in. Those are also the people we want on the list anyway, because they're the most likely to convert. And then we have to take advantage of the next tip that I know you're going to be sharing with us.
Yeah. And again, I want to stress this. And someone had said in the comments, you have to be careful of sending people away from Etsy. And we're not sending people away from Etsy to do anything other than opt in, right? To give us their name and email address. And then guess what happens on the thank you page? This is something else I should probably bring up. Okay. So on that landing page, it's going to say, hey, sign up for our VIP and instantly get 25% off your first order. Okay. That's important. So they enter their name and email address. And then the cool thing is within Everbee, we set up what they call a thank you page. The minute they hit submit, it's going to go to a thank you page. And on that thank you page, you're going to be able to put the code that you created for the discount. Okay. And then it's going to have a link right there. And guess where that link goes? Back to your Etsy shop. Okay. So if Etsy was to look at this, they'd be like, cool. You just collected an email. So this way here, you can send people over to your Etsy shop. Cool. Thank you so much. And you're going to hear here in a second why we know that Etsy wants us to do that, because they've literally come out and told us sellers that they want us to drive our own traffic. So we'll get to that here in a second. So, all right, let's move down the list here. So number 3 is we can sell more. Okay. Not just in Q4, we can sell more throughout the entire year. Because why? Because now we have a way to reach these people, and we're not relying on SEO. We're not relying on Etsy ads. We're not relying on people to remember to come on over to our shop, because now we have an email list that we can communicate with throughout the entire year. But again, this is why we're big on creating your brand around a niche. So this way here, we know what they're interested in. If it's the gardener, we know that anything gardening is going to be relevant for this person. Okay. And we're going to be able to remind them of things that we have going on, right? Or new products that are releasing, or, hey, reminders that, hey, if you haven't gotten your gardener gift for your friend, you probably should. We're running out of time. Christmas is just X amount of days away. So you can do it for Q4. We can ramp up sales. We can do promotions. We can do all that kind of stuff. And we can go ahead and take that customer base now and leverage it throughout the entire year. All right. So when you would have slow sales, we can increase your sales in that time by just sending some emails. And the reason why we know that Etsy wants us to do this is because they created what they call the share and save program. They give you a link that they want you to drive traffic with, and this will track that you sent the traffic. And they're actually going to give you money back off of your fees if you drive your own traffic through that link. So if they didn't want us to send our own traffic through email, why would they create this program? That's the question I would have, right? How are you going to use that link right now? People are going to say, well, I'm going to post it on social media. You know as well as I do, no one's looking at social media. No one's being able to get reach on social media anymore. If you have 1,000 people, and you're getting, let's go high, let's say 5% of people to see it. That's what, 50 people? It's not a lot of people. Okay. But if you had 1,000 people on an email list, our typical open rate is around 25 to 35%. Let's just go in the middle there. Let's say 30%. We're going to have 300 people now versus the 50. Okay. So really, really important that you understand that this is another reason why we are building a brand in a niche. Okay. We build the email list, and then we get to leverage the email list because we get to also do what Etsy wants us to do and share that link with the share and save program. So that's huge. That's something that we're a big fan of. And I love it that now I think they rolled it out in September of this past year. And now this will be, I think this will be the first, no, that was September last year. So we already went through a Q4. This will be the second Q4 that this will be, in fact, there. So I'm excited to use it. I'm excited to report on it. So hopefully you guys are using it as well. Let us know in the comments. Have you been using your share and save link? I'm just curious. Have you been using it? And if you have, how have you been sharing that link? Chris, I know you'll have a few things on this here, but selling through email, I know we could do a full podcast episode on that. But did I leave anything out?
Yeah, so share and save, Scott. I know people are going to say, oh, well, like you said, it's for social media or in text. If you actually read the blog post where they announced it, they said, share it on social media, in text with your family and friends, on your personal website, or in email marketing, right? Those were the options. And so that is the thing. And I think the holdup that a lot of people have, Scott, and I'm seeing it in the comments, is they're saying, hey, you can't link out of Etsy. It's against Etsy's policy to do that. First of all, the link is not an active link, right? We're not putting it in the product descriptions. We're not doing all of those kinds of things. We're putting it where we are allowed to put it, which would be in the banner, in our images, in those kinds of places. Second, Etsy's policy for linking out is about avoiding fees, right? We're not trying to avoid fees if we're actually driving more traffic to Etsy and creating what Etsy actually wants, which is conversions. And so you don't need to worry about this, right? What we're not doing is not what we are doing is not against Etsy's terms of service. We've double checked everything. It's perfectly fine. And the real moral behind all of this is, what is the reason behind Etsy's policies for these things? Why did they come out and say, hey, we're going to get rid of the emails from the API so that people can't just email people? Well, they don't want people randomly getting emailed. They are perfectly okay with having people opt in. If you read through the Etsy seller handbook, it's there in a lot of different places. So let's take advantage of that. It's the single highest return on investment thing that we can do. And if we partner, Scott, with something like the Share and Save program, we not only create that flywheel effect of more sales and more frequent sales, but we get to save 4% along the way. And it's no different than posting that link in our Facebook page, on our Twitter, on our LinkedIn, wherever else people would think to post it. We just put it in the body of the email and let people come back to Etsy and buy more often and at bigger dollar amounts.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So yeah, and I see some people saying like you're putting it in like Pinterest, you're putting it in IG, you're putting it in your Facebook posts. My next question would be is like, how is that working for you? Because you can see the links, you can see how many times it's been clicked, and then you can see how many sales have come through. I'm curious how that's working. I know myself, I haven't looked at it lately, but I know that we're over $8,000, over $8,000 in link sales. So basically a visitor that clicked on the link and went over and purchased something through that is just over $8,000. Okay. So that's $8,000 we wouldn't have had. Okay. And I didn't pay for it. I didn't pay ads. Now that also brings up a really, really another important part, which I didn't put on this list, which I probably should have. When you're running Etsy ads, okay, everyone is looking at that as like, okay, I'm running this ad. I need to make a profit. Okay. I got to make a profit on that, because if I don't, I'm not going to make any money. Okay. So if you're doing again, what the experts are saying to do, sell this one mug, right? Or this jug, and you sell this to one customer in a niche, but then you have 50 other niches and 50 other mugs, just like this one, right? You're probably not going to sell them something else. But the cool thing is when you're doing what we're doing, we aren't looking so much as that Etsy ads has to be 100% profitable. And the reason why is because we know if someone comes in through an Etsy ad, they purchase. Okay. We know now that they have the opportunity to purchase more. So we went from they landed there, they added the one thing to their cart, but now maybe they added 2 other things or 3 other things. And we have seen this, and you can see that in your dashboard. You can see people that are repeat customers. You can see people that have ordered more than one. Okay. So that's the other thing. That's why we're willing to spend a little bit more, and we're willing to not make as much on the front end sale, because that's what it is. Right? We get them in. And remember what I said in the very beginning, if we can increase the order value, now we went from that one product that you're maybe thinking to yourself, like, oh my gosh, like I spent $5 and I only made now $5 when I should have made $10. I'm going to stop the ads. When we're looking at it like, oh, we made $5 to acquire a customer and potentially get them on our email list and then sell them in the future. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, one of the things that all of the sharks ask their businesses that they're thinking about investing in, what is your cost for customer acquisition? And they always want to know, is it break even? Are you spending $5? Are you spending $20? Because a lot of times people are losing on that sale, but they're making it up in the long game. Okay. But again, I don't hear any other Etsy experts out there, and we're not experts at all. We're just, I feel like we're just in the trenches right along with you. We just might be a little bit further than you, and we've been doing business a long time. But I definitely feel as though that's not being talked about. And then people get all nervous about running ads. I get it, right? If you're just hoping to bank money on this one mug, Yeah, that's scary. But if you're knowing that if you sell this and you didn't make as much as you could have if you didn't run ads, or if you would have had a better conversion rate, it doesn't really matter to us, because we know, get them on the email list, or as soon as they buy that, they're going to also get a thank you email, because we have that internal email trigger set inside of Etsy that they allow us to do. And because we have products that are related to that one product, there's a good chance they might take us up on that offer and buy something else. And then immediately now we've went from not as much profit to more profit, right? So you see how that all works. So again, I just wanted to bring that up on the Etsy ad side of things, because a lot of people aren't looking at the Etsy ads as a way to acquire a customer. And that's what we're doing. And Chris, this wasn't one of my 5 things that I wanted to share, but now that I have, and I opened up this can of worms, anything you want to shed light on there? And again, we only have a certain amount of time today, Chris, because I know Chris could go on for days with ads, because he spent millions of dollars on ads, and he's got a little bit of a thing with ads.
Yeah, inching up on 100 million, if not over that at this point, which is terrifying. I'd rather have just paid myself that money, I think, at this point, just from the headaches that ads can cause if you don't do them right, Scott. But I think this really does tie into your point, which was, I think, the next thing that we were going to talk about, looking at the little conversation we had beforehand, which is Q4 is all about building the customer base, right? And ads is a great way to do that. It gets us out in front of more people faster and more frequently, right? Etsy is a little bit more liberal with where they place you when you're running ads than they are on just the purely organic side, because they say, hey, we might consider this to be a teacup, but it's also a coffee mug. And so you don't even have to have necessarily coffee mug in your listing, but if you're running ads on it, they'll show you for that because it's potentially relevant to your listing. And then you have to do the job of pulling that back. So by turning on Etsy ads, it lets us really start that flywheel of building that customer base. And I know you have a lot more to expand on that point, so I'll let you dig into that a little bit. But I think Etsy ads is a great way to do that. It gets us in front of people faster. It gets us the data that we need to optimize faster. And there's no reason not to do it unless, Scott, you are playing that launch as many products as you can and have low margins. It's very hard to make a business on $1 dancing avocado mug profits. It's a lot easier if you're making $10, $15, $20 in profit, which is doable.
Yeah.
If you're using the niche-based approach. And so everything becomes easier, whether it's increasing your order size, building an email list, selling more through email, even running ads becomes easier when you're coming at this from the niche-based approach.
Yeah. No, I mean, so this kind of, this went right into our next reason for focusing on one niche. Okay. This was number 4. And that is, you can take advantage of Q4 to build your customer base. But how do you build your customer base? You're building your email list. So going into, like we talked about in number 2, like building your email list, and I kind of gave you a way of doing it internally. Well, now that we're in Q4, if you get this stuff set up like now, okay, as soon as Q4 kicks off, you're going to have everything in place, because you have to think about it like you're building this little mechanism, this little machine, if you will. And as soon as you set it up, it's going to fire, right? Like, so it's like all we need now is to focus on getting a sale. If we get a sale, that's going to trigger the email that's going to get sent out by Etsy that you already pre-wrote. Okay. It's going to have your link to your landing page that you built in Everbee email. Okay. And then from there, someone's going to sign up. When they sign up, they're going to get taken to a thank you page. They're going to be redirected to your site again, another chance to buy more. And then from there, you can follow up with a welcome email and thanking them again. And then maybe reminding them to use their 20% off coupon or something like that. And that's all automated once we get that set up. So it's like a little machine that we're building. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you want to do that now. Okay. Like right now. And again, if you're not using Everbee email, this would be my little call to action for you to do it and sign up for it. Sign up for the growth plan, because you'll get to be able to use the email portion of that. If you're not yet using it, I recommend you do. Head on over to brandcreators.com/Everbee. Again, that's brandcreators.com/Everbee. And if you want some additional help with like marketing the email, we have a free guide that you can go through. And if you want that guide, in the comments, just put email. Okay. In the comments, just put email and we'll make sure that we get you a copy of that. All right. I'm curious in the comments, before we go any further, how many people right now are collecting emails? Okay. Let me know in the comments. I just want a show of hands. I just want a show of hands. Okay. If you guys would do that, that would be amazing. But yeah, number 4, pretty simple for me. If so, last year, last Q4, I believe we did just about just over 2,500 orders. Okay. And so I'm going to count that as like those are customers. So we had the chance to basically collect 2,500 people in our database. Now, did we collect all of those? No, but I'm going to say we probably gained at least 1,000. So now I have 1,000 customers from this Q4 or last Q4 that now I get to use for this Q4. So you see how it kind of creates this flywheel, right? It's like it just builds momentum on itself. So this Q4 will help with, or last Q4 will help with this Q4. This Q4 will build on it and then help for next Q4. And it just keep building and building and building. The other cool thing is when you build this customer base, let's say, God forbid, that Etsy decides to shut you down. You got nothing, zero. You got a nice little customer base though, don't you? So you could set up a Shopify shop and you can start directing people there. How? Email. You got an email list, right? You can do that all day long. So it's a way to protect yourself as well. So number 4 is taking advantage. Don't wait. Take advantage of Q4 because Q4 for a lot of sellers is like 80 to 85% of the sales for the entire year. Okay. And now's the time to capitalize on that. The other thing is when you have that customer base, like I said earlier, you can now, throughout those slow seasons, you can have a little promotion. You can let people know that you have something new. You can remind them about special holidays or special events or special days. And from there, you're going to be able to see a lift in sales because you have this asset now. Okay. So number 4 is taking advantage of Q4 sales and building that customer base. All right. Chris, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think, Scott, you and I have hit on this a few different times. The biggest thing we are a fan of with the niche-based approach is having that customer base. If you sell a dancing avocado mug to somebody, you have to have something else to sell them. And if we want to take advantage of Q4, the real way to do that is to have other things to sell them throughout the rest of the year. Yes, the fourth quarter for the vast majority of businesses is going to be 40, 50, 60, maybe even 70% of your sales. In some cases, it's a little bit higher than that. But how do we stretch that out over the rest of the year and make sure that we're not going from feast to famine? We use that niche-based approach. And if we can think about it that way, then Q4 is all about building that customer base that we can tap into, not just through the rest of the next year, right? 2025, but 2026, 2027, and beyond. And if we think about this as a customer acquisition exercise, and I know that, getting as many customers as possible that will continue to buy from us, then it makes it a little bit easier to understand, okay, I am willing to spend a little bit of money on Etsy ads, or I'm willing to not make 100% of my margin because I'm going to run some discounts and promotions to get as many people as I can into the store to purchase from me the first time so that I can get them coming back again and again. But if we don't set ourselves up from success, it makes it a lot harder to do any of those things or to even justify it to ourselves. If we know that they're going to come back and purchase from us again and again, because everything else in the store is something that they would be willing to purchase, then it becomes very easy to say, hey, yeah, let me run a Black Friday promotion this year and not take as much margin on that day. Or, hey, let me spend a little bit more on Etsy ads during Q4 just to see what happens, to get more feet in the door and turn more people into customers.
Yeah. And guys, I know we're talking a little bit about Etsy ads and stuff, and that is a big piece here. We've got another segment that we're going to do here coming up that will talk about Etsy ad strategies, also some mistakes people are making and what to avoid. So hang with us. We've got that to cover as well. And I know Etsy ads is a big topic, and people, they have a lot of questions about that, and hopefully this will help you with what to do and what not to do. So hang tight for that. All right, cool. So let's move on to the last and final thing I want to share with you, and another reason why you want to really focus on that one niche. And it's kind of like everything rolled up into one in this last thing is it's going to allow us to sell more in Q4 through email and when people are favoriting our shop or our items. Okay. So what I mean by that is if we didn't have a niche focus, We're probably not going to sell them more. We can't sell them more through email, really. I mean, we could send them emails, but they're like, why is this person sending me something about gardening when I bought a bass fishing thing, right? It just doesn't align. All right. So you're going to be able to increase those sales in Q4 because now, like we said, you have more products to sell them. That's number one. Okay. Number two is now when you have those internal email triggers, which if you guys don't have them set up yet, you've got to get them turned on. That's inside of your Etsy account. That's if someone abandons the cart, you get to send them out a coupon. If someone favorites one of your items, you get to send a coupon. And if someone buys something, you get to send a coupon. Those right there, those need to be set up like ASAP. Okay. But again, we're going to be able to sell more because we have more to offer. Okay. We have more to offer. And then selling through the email, that's where, and we just recently went over this with our Q4 Etsy camp, our campers. We're doing a training camp right now. It's closed. So I won't give you any information on that right now, but it's closed. And we're working with these, this small group of Etsy sellers for Q4. But the one thing is, we're kind of having them get everything ready and set for Q4 to capitalize on running and really planning these promotions. Okay. And if you're thinking through it versus just, I'm going to throw up a bunch of products and hopefully Etsy SEO kicks in, we're strategically planning and we're promoting. Okay. And we're promoting, meaning like if you're running 25% off of a Christmas ornament, well, you can do that for like 4 days and you can let people know through email. And when you let them know through email, we're going to do it in a way that's going to remind them more than once. Now, if we're just going to put up the sale and let Etsy do its thing, we might get some sales, but we can get a lot more sales if we use that email. And then I also threw in there, like when people favorite your shop, they're favoriting your shop because they like what they see and they like your brand. And if they do that and you're niche focused, guess what? They're telling you, we like the stuff that you do about bass fishing or about gardening, right? And so then they're going to get notifications about your shop, or if you post something new, they've already raised their hand. They're probably going to see it. And we don't have to really, the SEO algorithm is going to favor that than they are if someone that didn't favorite your shop. So that's why everything comes down to really having that focus on a niche, but then also on the customer and what could they buy today? What could they buy tomorrow? And what could they buy a year from now? And that's the big roll up here I wanted to give you in number 5. And again, if you just took all of these and put them together, I mean, the reasons that we're doing this, I mean, they way outperform if you're just selling that one-off product. All right. So that's what I got for you. Chris, you want to add anything there, wrap anything up? I know you're going to do a recap of everything because we did go on there for a little while, but is there anything that I left out? Anything else that we need to cover here?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, Scott, maybe it's a bonus reason, maybe it's just a side reason or a shoulder reason, right? Is if we're doing this with the niche-based approach and we're looking at the increase in order sales, we're looking at building the email list, we're also creating security for ourselves because we've created a loyal following. And so if anything dumb happens, right, Etsy just stops existing or our store gets blocked for a short period of time, we're not only reliant on the internal traffic within Etsy, we do still have a lifeline and we can go to a Shopify store or we can go somewhere else. If we are 100% reliant on getting more organic traffic because we're launching new listings and that's the only thing we're ever going to do, and something dumb happens and it happens to high-level sellers, it happens to new sellers, right? Etsy's AI goes wild, then we're in a place where all of that work just goes away with the flip of a switch or the click of a mouse, if you will. And so being able to build that customer base, being able to have that email list, being able to sell all year round and starting to build that customer loyalty means we can either through our own willing act to say, hey, I'm also going to start a Shopify, which I know some people are talking about in the comments, or something silly happens within the Etsy platform itself. We're protected from that. And we at least have some potential of recuperating some of the hard work that we've done. And so I think Those 5, I think, are the big, and I know I just said 4 because I'm trying not to drop my pen. Those 5 are the big 5, I think. That's just another thing. I know a lot of people have that concern in the back of their head. And if we're doing this with a niche-based approach, it's a lot easier to make that transition if we have to,
Yeah.
or if we want to, than it is if we're doing this as the everything store.
Yeah, I wanted to also just bring this up. So Dream Talking with Vicky says, I love this. All applies to digital shops too. Niche is key for me. You're 100% right. Because we get people that say, does this only work for print on demand? No, it works on if you make your own jewelry. It works if you do handmade. It works if you're doing digital products. It doesn't matter. We're focusing on the customer in a niche, period. Right. And everything else, you just have to think along those lines of like, what else could we sell this customer? What else would they want to buy? What else would they want to buy in the future? How do we collect an email? Like all of those things are going to apply. So this is across the board. This is like business 101, right? And I say 101. Yes, you can say it's a little bit advanced. And I think it's interesting because I'm sure in colleges right now, they're not even teaching this level of business marketing. And I really think it should be. But I'm a guy that didn't go to college. So what do I know? I just built a few businesses over here. That's all.
I mean, I did, and it wasn't taught, right? Like I even have a marketing related degree, and this stuff was not taught in university.
Yeah, cool. All right, guys. Also, before we move on, we got some more things. We got some breaking news we're going to share with you here coming up shortly. Another thing that Josh Silverman just dropped. We're going to share that with you. We also have some Etsy ads strategy of what to do, what not to do. We've got that coming up. Before we do get into that, though, I would love if you guys would do us a favor. And if you got value from this so far, just go ahead and smash the like button. Give us a little love there. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, you should probably subscribe because there's more stuff to come. Every Thursday, we do Etsy shop audits. One will be released a week after tomorrow. Tomorrow, we've got a special edition coming out where Chris and I went over 13 lessons learned after conducting 27 Etsy shop audits. And that's going to drop tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Again, if you want to get notified when that goes live or any other future videos, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And we'd appreciate that. All right. With that being said, Chris, I am going to turn it over to you once I tee it up here. Are you ready to give people the recap here and distill this all down into a nice little package so people can walk away with some action steps and actually in a concise way?
Yeah, let's do it.
You good to go?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. I heard
assuming my voice sticks with me. I said, yeah, let's do it. Like I'm 12 all over again, but yeah.
All right, here we go. All right. All right. So we are heading into Q4. And what we wanted to do today is we wanted to give you 5 reasons why Etsy sellers must focus on one niche. And some of these you might not be aware of. And to do that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Chris Schaefer. And he is going to share with you these 5 reasons you should be focusing on one niche, especially heading into Q4. So Chris, what you got?
All right, Scott. So the reason number 1 here, and I think this is the killer reason, if you're not doing this for any other reason, this is the thing you need to pay attention to, is that if you're focused on a niche, you're increasing the number of orders, so the frequency of orders, and the overall order size. You get 2 bigger bites at the apple if you're using the niche-based approach. And what do we mean when we're saying the niche-based approach? All of the products that you sell in your store would appeal to the same buyer. So if we're selling a piece of luggage to someone who loves fishing, we're also going to have the luggage tags and all of the things that go along with it. This allows us to not only increase the cart size or the order size that comes in, but it also increases the frequency with which buyers can purchase from our store. If we're using the spaghetti at the wall, the everything store approach, we lose both of those opportunities because even the related products that Etsy might show to a buyer are not necessarily relevant to that buyer, and we lose out on the frequency side of things. And I know, Scott, a lot of people are wondering, how often do Etsy buyers really buy? Well, it goes from once a year to pretty frequently once a month or more. But what we saw from the Etsy buyer survey is that the average Etsy buyer is buying 5 times a year or more on the website. And so if we're able to get even just 1 or 2 more of those throughout the year by using the niche-based approach, it's absolutely worth it. But what we're going to see during Q4 is that we're going to see a massive increase in order size. Tip number 2, you should be building an email list, and you can build an email list with a niche niche-based approach. You can't do this if you're using the spaghetti at the wall approach, because the emails that you send won't be relevant to anybody. And the way that you should be doing this, if you aren't already aware, leave email down in the comments and we can make sure that we get you hooked up with the exact step-by-step guide. But what we're not talking about here is scraping emails from Etsy buyers or downloading a list, buying a list from somewhere. What we're doing is giving potential Etsy buyers and our previous Etsy buyers a reason to opt in. One of the best ways to do that is to create what we call a VIP list. Give them 25% off their first or next purchase. Get them in that ecosystem, get them used to buying from you, and start sending them emails, right? You're able to collect emails very easily that way because they're already on the fence. They're already considering buying. They can save an extra 25%. They're willing to give you their email in exchange for that. Scott, tip number 3, once we've started to build that email list, we can actually sell a lot through email, especially during Q4. You guys have heard me say it once. You've probably heard me say it a million times if you've been around the Brand Creators channel for any stretch of time, but email is the single highest return on investment marketing activity an e-commerce business can do. If you're selling on Etsy, you're in the e-commerce business, right? We get a bigger return from that than from social media, from SEO, from launching new products, from any of the other things that we can do. It comes from email, but we have to build the list to be able to do that. The extra little cherry on top, the extra little nugget that Etsy gives us is they launched last year in September what they call the Share and Save program, where any traffic that you send to Etsy from an external source, like your social media pages or your email marketing list, you save on the fees. And I believe, Scott, it's 4%, I think is what you end up saving, which adds up tremendously as we're going through this. Tip number 4, you can take advantage of Q4 to build your customer base. And Scott, one of the reasons you and I are such big fans of the niche-based approach rather than the spaghetti at the wall approach is because we can go back to that same customer base again and again. We don't have to launch more products to get more traffic. We don't have to launch more products to get more sales. If somebody has purchased from us in the past, there's a good chance they're going to purchase from us in the future. There is no better time to build that customer base and build your email list along with it than during Q4. For the vast majority of businesses, this is going to be 40, 50, 60, maybe even 70% plus of all of the sales that you're going to get throughout the entire year is going to come during this 3-month period. And if we can't take advantage of that, then it doesn't make a lot of sense. The other thing that people seem to miss with this, Scott, especially during something like Q4, is if they've bought from you maybe in October, there's a good chance they can buy from you again. And if we're doing the other things that we're talking about, like building an email list and sending frequent emails, there's a chance we can get them to buy several times during the fourth quarter because they're already used to buying from us. They already know the quality of our stuff, and they have other people to give gifts to during that period. And I think that customer base, Scott, leads me into tip number 5, which is selling more after Q4. Everybody asks us, okay, Q4 is over. I took a mental health break because it's been crazy. Now what? And the answer is nothing if you're using the spaghetti at the wall approach, right? We have to be relying on that traffic. That traffic takes a big dip at the beginning of January. It takes a big dip at the end of July when everybody's going on vacation. How do we balance out those sales through the rest of the year? Well, we build that customer base. We build that email list as we work our way through Q4. And then we have the ability through emails, like we do any other time of the year, and through shop favorites, abandoned carts, everything that happened during that Q4 period, we can start to send notifications using either our emails or Etsy's internal marketing triggers to the people who have favorited our shop. We're going to get more eyeballs throughout the rest of the year as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, it all comes down to, like you said, Chris, is like, that's why we are focused on one niche, right? If you focus on the one niche, everything else to me becomes way easier, because now we don't have to get, well, shiny object syndrome because this thing's selling 15 grand in a random niche that I don't serve at the moment. So it really simplifies things. It also allows us to stay focused on serving that customer. And from there, we're able to create products. We can connect with them. We can ask them what they would like for future products, or maybe we can get their opinions on things that we're developing, or even just tease an upcoming product and let them know about that. So to me, it all comes down to focusing on the one niche. So this way here, we can sell more products, the time of purchase, but also at a later date. And we're able to do it over and over and over again. So acquiring that customer, once we do that, even if it costs us a little bit, we can always make it up in the future. So I love it. That's great, Chris. Great job. Let's go ahead and see if we got any quick questions, and then we will dive into the next topic, which I believe the next topic that we are going to talk about is this breaking news that had just happened, and you've got some footage of it, so we're going to be sharing that as well. So do you have any questions, Chris, that we wanted to address before we move on to the breaking news?
Yeah, no, Justina had asked, can you explain how the email through Everbee works? I know I'm super dumb to not have an email list yet. Not dumb, right? There's no reason
Just
to
not
worry about
aware.
it.
Yeah.
Like you said, Scott, it's not taught in college, right? Like this isn't something people
No.
talk about. And okay, we're in 2024 right now. If you said email marketing to most people, they'd go, oh, that doesn't work. But the fact is, it's still the highest return on investment marketing activity, period, hands down. So gut feeling and not hearing about it, no reason to feel bad. She said, I'm anxious now because Etsy even removed Aweber. They didn't remove Aweber. What they did was they removed the automatic addition of emails through Etsy's API, right? And they did that to everybody. And the reason they did that is because they want to make sure they're compliant. They want to make sure the only people who are being emailed are people who opted in. The US typically operates on what's called an opt-out system. So I can just email anybody that I feel like, and unless they tell me to stop, I can keep emailing them. It's kind of backwards from the way the rest of the world does it, but Etsy's doing that to make sure that only people who have opted in are being emailed. How does it work? It's very simple, very straightforward. If you get into the system, you can take a look at it. But the thing I would recommend is just drop email in the comments and we'll get you the guide. It'll give you the step-by-step walkthrough of not only how to get it set up, but also the way that we would suggest you start getting emails onto that list. And Scott, the question I have about that is, does that system work all year round or does that only work during Q4?
It works all year round. And that's the cool thing. Like once you set it up, it's kind of done, right? You set it up and then you basically are able to, start collecting emails. And then once you have them in your database, they're yours, right? Like until they unsubscribe or if they unsubscribe, they're yours. So yeah.
MM92 dropping a $5 super chat.
Whoa, look at that.
Hey,
there's a cup of coffee, Chris.
Is Etsy shipping guarantee worth it since they prioritize listings, even though profit drastically reduces having to cover shipping after $35? What are your thoughts on Etsy's shipping guarantees?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. And as far as are they going to prioritize that because it's guaranteed? It's hard to say. I don't know. I think if they did, it's a very, very small little bit. There's a lot of other factors that go into them prioritizing. So, as far as and again, here I'm just reading through the thing. So it's like even though profit drastically reduces having to cover shipping after 35. Once again, though, if we're thinking about acquiring a customer, right, then we shift that mindset because we're not trying to nickel and dime every sale to try to squeeze out as much as we can. If you have a back end, if we have products that they can sell in the future or that you could sell them in the future. Chris, what's your thoughts on that?
It's a complex topic. For me, if you can get free shipping and you can cover that, fine. What we've seen through the buyer survey and even our own behavior is that shipping is not going to be a make or break thing for most people as long as it's reasonable, right? When Etsy talks about like the free shipping gives you a little bit of a boost, it's not going to be the make or break thing from an SEO perspective, especially as they move to their new approach to search. If you think you need that extra little boost, then yeah, go for it, right? Yeah. It's the same thing as, all of the other little tweaks that you can have. It's not that big of a deal. If you have the right title, if you have the right tags and you have good images, that's going to get you 90% of the way there in terms of ranking organically. The prioritization, right, is not going to be that great. The reason they do it is because it's a potential conversion rate booster. But what we've seen is that's not the make or break thing. The biggest thing for conversion and the biggest thing Etsy buyers say that they care about the most, right? I think it was 9.1 out of 10 in terms of importance. More important than the title, more important than the description, more important than shipping, more important than anything else was those listing images. And so rather than worrying about some of the small tweaks, focus on that big chunk, which is the images. And if you can give, free shipping, or if you do qualify for their shipping guarantee, go for it. It'll give you an extra little boost, but it's going to be 5-10%, not 90%. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And they just said, to clarify, Etsy states that signing up for shipping guarantee gets your listings prioritized. Yes, to a certain degree, right? If mine's selling more than yours and you're getting that, then mine's converting higher, I'm going to probably still outrank you. They're not going to go, oh, because you're doing 35. They just care about because they feel like if you're going to have shipping guarantee, they're assuming you're going to have a higher conversion than someone else. But if I don't have the shipping and I charge $5 for shipping and you're getting free shipping, whatever, or maybe I'm charging 10 and you're charging nothing, but my product's better than yours, someone's going to buy it, not because of the shipping. Right. So to me, it still does come down to, they are going to prioritize, because that's what they're saying. Like, they want you to offer that, but they're going to also prioritize sales. Right. So nothing is going to out trump sales. So I would test it. Like, I would test it, like turn it on for a couple weeks, see what happens.
Yeah. And if you think, what is the reason they would prioritize a listing with the shipping guarantee? Because it's a conversion rate boost, right? That's the only reason, because Etsy's job, and we'll hear this straight out of Etsy CEO's mouth here in just a minute, is to put the product in front of someone that they are most likely to buy. 9 a.m. Studio dropping a $4 super sticker as well. Thanks, guys. What they are looking at is connecting the listing. Anytime you search, the number one listing in organic, if they're doing their job correctly, is the listing you are going to purchase, period.
Yeah.
What they do in the background to create all those factors is try to figure out what influences that conversion rate. Shipping, they know, has an effect. So anything that has an effect, how big or how small, doesn't really matter. They're going to start to look at all of those factors.
Yeah.
Geek Authority said, you guys talked a lot about email. Is it a good idea to parse your email list to specifically target buyers who have always bought the same product or product type to make sure they see it? Or is it always just a general blast? If you have the information to layer on top of there and you can create segments, you can. What I've noticed in most e-commerce businesses, Scott, and I'm talking about businesses with 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 emails, is they tend to over segment. So they're like, you bought a small blue sweater on March 4th. What, right, yada, 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 yada. And then they go to send an email and they go, I don't have any idea what segments to send in here, right? If you can keep it generic and say, hey, this group of customers likes mugs, and you have a new mug, then you send all of those people just to make sure that they're getting it. There's nothing wrong with sending it to everybody, unless you have something to do, you're sending a bunch of different emails. Segmentation is a little bit more advanced. And as you work your way through, you'll start to see some of those themes, right? We know that these people love pillows. I'm going to send it to the pillow people, or maybe I'll send an extra reminder. And I think that's actually a better way to use segmentation, is to say, okay, we're doing a product announcement that goes to everybody. And instead of following up 2 days later and emailing everybody again, essentially the same email, right, hey, let's hit those pillow people one more time, because they're the most likely people to buy. That's a weird phrase. Hit those pillow people.
Right.
Let's go after the people who have bought pillows from us in the past. Give them that extra little reminder, because they're the people who are most likely to purchase it anyway. Yep. Diane said, you guys are great. This is the most Etsy online business specific channel I found. No muddled up info. Didn't know what else to call that. So I like it. Etsy online business specific. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right, cool. We got some more things to cover. Keep the questions coming. We'll star them. If we have time, we will answer them. But we do have some other things to cover here. And the first thing is this breaking news that Chris is coming to me with, which I have not even watched this myself. So this is going to be the first time that I'm watching this. So I'm excited right along with you. So let me go ahead, Chris, and tee it up for you. And then you can go ahead and share what you got. So there's some new breaking news from Etsy, once again, and their CEO on SEO, and that it could be changing forever, and hopefully in a good way. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over to Chris Schaefer, who has a clip from Josh Silverman that recently just announced this and discussed it. And we're going to actually hear people asking questions about it. So I'm really, really excited to hear this as well. And this is the first time I am listening to this news. So Chris, I'm dying here to hear this. Why don't you get this thing queued up and let us get in on this?
Yeah, so I did the hard work of sitting through the Etsy Q2 investor call, which I would not suggest that anyone does. It was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, but it was worth it, Scott, because we were able to pull out a couple key pieces of information. And what I did was I took a portion from the regular scheduled programming of the investor call, where they talk about what they've done and what they're doing. And then I added in a part that came in to clarify a little bit from the Q&A section at the end. And you and I did a video recently on Etsy's black box SEO algorithm and some of Josh Silverman's thoughts on this. This is talking and expanding on one of the points that you and I found really interesting. So if you're ready, I'll just go ahead and hit play on my side here and we'll listen to what Josh has
Go
to say.
for it.
Initiatives we're making in quality to ensure we highlight the very best of Etsy, differentiating ourselves in a sea of commoditized merchandise. We stand for keeping commerce human, and we have an enormous conviction that doing this in a way that no one else can is our most important competitive advantage, and that these initiatives represent a tremendous unlock for buyer consideration. We mentioned on our last call that we're using large language models and Gen AI techniques to better understand both the shopping mission you're on, as well as our sellers' inventory along these 4 key focus areas: suppressing and removing items that violate our policy, up-ranking better quality listings in search and recommendations, and better curating and organizing our marketplace. I'm extremely proud to report on the fantastic progress our search team is making to move beyond our historical focus on solving for relevancy in search, when you know what you want and can't find it anywhere else, to new initiatives meant to also highlight the best of Etsy and feature the incredible diversity and uniqueness of our sellers' merchandise. In the past, our search algorithms ranked each listing individually based on likelihood to convert.
Can I just say that I feel vindicated, right? Anybody that's watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, give me some hands in the chat or something, right? I'm channeling Captain Holt right now and screaming vindication, because this is what you and I have talked about, and he's hinted at this in that black box SEO call where he said, look, if you go to YouTube, you watch all these things, they're telling you it's all about stuff and keywords, and that's not really how we work. He's very explicitly saying here now, that's how it has always worked in the past. It's about conversion. How likely is your listing to convert if Etsy shows you for that search term? So Scott, if everything else is equal, we have the same title, tags, photos, whatever, you have a higher conversion rate than I do, you rank higher than I do.
He just said it
right now. Yeah.
He literally just said it. So I'm glad, like you said, Chris, I'm glad that we know that what we were saying was pretty true. At least that's what we're thinking, because, well, I mean, the CEO should probably know how things work. So I don't know.
It's almost like reading all of those documents and parsing through the weird legalese that Etsy writes everything and paid off. Who knew?
Which often resulted in buyers seeing far too many similar items rather than a more holistic set. Here's some powerful data. We roughly cut in half the percentage of searches where a high percentage of listings seen on page 1 are from a single seller. We reduced the percentage of searches that have 2 or more listings that may appear identical by over 70%. We're incredibly excited about what this might mean for future visitation as buyers see a more diverse and higher quality set of listings each time they visit Etsy. In addition to helping buyers, these initiatives also support our sellers, given how important it is that we nurture the best of Etsy across our seller base. Our latest search experiments resulted in approximately 70% of shops having more visibility in search, with the share of search impressions from small and medium shops increasing by nearly 30%. Later this summer, we'll empower sellers by giving them more agency and actionable insights than ever before into factors like listing quality and completeness that can impact how they show up in search.
That's a good one.
Our search engine right now is
pause that, Chris. Yeah. So I think that's interesting, because that's what we said in the SEO black box. That video that we did a reaction to, it was audio. If you guys missed that, we'll link that up in the description. That was the very, very private for investors, really. It was a meeting that was held, and we got a hold of the recording. I mean, we did it legally. It was out there. We just had to dig for it. And then we listened to it. And that there explained what they call the SEO black box. And Josh went ahead and talked about that, but he also talked about what he's sharing now. And he's giving a little bit more clarity on when we could potentially see this, is where they're going to allow sellers to see where they are lacking for visibility. And I think that's going to be incredibly important. So I'm excited to hear that. And I think he said like late summer, which we're approaching that now. So Josh, let's get that thing out there before Q4. What do you say, Joshy boy? Let's get that thing out the door.
late summer for a 7-year-long beta potentially,
Yeah,
right?
right.
We know that they are working on this, and I think one of the things that really stood out is they said that they were able to already diversify just on the changes that they've made so far. And I think Etsy sellers may not feel this because we're in the slowest part of the year, but one of the things that he pointed out there, Scott, was 70% of the shops that they've tested this with had more visibility in search, meaning when people searched, they were seen more frequently. And the share of search impressions for small shops, and this is something everybody's worried about. And one of the reasons they looked at conversion and then had the Etsy listing boost, right? You create that new boost and they're trying to figure out how you fit into the whole Etsy ecosystem, was to account for the difference between large shops and small shops. They said this outperformed with small shops, and they were able to increase search impressions. So how often you show up in a search result for those smaller and medium-sized shops by almost 30%. So a huge increase for those people by doing it this way. And I wanted, before you and I discuss what this actually looks like, I wanted to give the Q&A portion of this because he does expand on that teleprompter answer a little bit in response to one of the investor questions.
Okay,
really optimized for conversion, which is why we have historically shown you, for example, multiple very similar variants of an item. If the black box algorithm thinks the most likely thing you're going to buy is this, it might show you 8 variants of roughly the same thing. And if that's actually what you wanted for the 2 or 3% of people who are really ready to buy that thing, that was a great experience and it drives conversion. But what about the other 97% who really weren't necessarily ready to buy? We would be much better served to show them a broader variety of things so that they understand everything we have on offer, whether they're going to buy this session or come back more often. So I think what we're going to end up with now, dramatic improvements in the diversity of items we're showing on Etsy, the diversity of sellers we're showing on Etsy, I think is going to drive a lot more people to say, wow, there's a lot more stuff for sale than I realized. There's more categories of items for sale than I realized, and they're going to come back more often. That's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. So I would love to be at that little table that they're at though right now, because I got some questions. But my thing is like, okay, that sounds great in theory. Okay. The main thing that I heard there was we want to let shoppers know that we have more than just from that one seller, right? That's kind of what I got there. And they're saying like, that's going to make them go, oh, wow, Etsy's got a lot of things on here. That's great. I'm going to come back. Versus if you split test that the old way to the new way, are your sales going to suffer because you're not showing them the ones that have gotten the most sales, which have more reviews and have higher conversions? Is that going to actually decrease your conversion rate on the front end for Etsy? Not us, but for Etsy. The seller that's getting more listing positions is going to obviously benefit more, but is that going to hurt conversions overall? And I'm sure they're split testing that, because if that shows, that experiment shows, and they're like, okay, cool, but we can't prove that people are coming back to the shop more and buying more. They might be coming back, but they're not buying. But over here on test A, we're showing them more of the same, but they're buying more. Why are you going to change that? Right? So for the newer seller, the medium-sized seller, and you're like, oh, cool, this is going to give me an opportunity to show in search. But if you're not getting sales, is that really going to benefit? And are you going to show up in search? Don't know. The vert will still be out, but I know they're going to be split testing this, because I mean, that's going to be a huge thing that they got to look at as far as the data. You're not just going to roll this out and go, oh, great, we rolled it out. There's going to be data behind it.
Yeah, and I think the real impetus behind this, and he said the word, and I'm not sure if you picked up on it, Scott, and I have one more clip that I want to share with you, and I want to see if you
little bonus clip
recall from this another algorithm that you and I are fairly familiar with that uses the same word. And so I'm going to pull this clip in.
Efforts we've had in place in the past continue in terms of having a robust toolkit for sellers so they can put their items on sale. They can offer, a discount to a returning customer. If you've left an item in checkout, they can offer you a coupon to get you to come back and close. And we see sellers continue to use and adopt those tools. We have, for example, as part of the loyalty program, deals and drops, we're going to be highlighting like things that we think are really cool value and really special value. We want to lean more into discovery on Etsy.
Where have you heard that word before?
Discovery. Are we,
Suggestions,
what's that?
suggestions, discovery,
Yeah.
right? Instead of waiting for you to search for the thing,
Yeah.
we're going to show you the thing.
So it's
Who does
more,
that?
I think we're piggybacking off of the big giant out there.
YouTube,
Yes.
right? And that change in YouTube's algorithm, YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world, but 80% of their traffic comes from browse and suggest, the videos they are giving to you.
Yep.
20%, they are the second largest search engine in the world and only 20% of their traffic. And so what I think Josh is saying here, and again, you guys can go listen to the entire investor call if you want to watch your eyes bleed. But what they are saying is they want to move away from only keyword relevance to say, when you come to Etsy, we want to show you the next thing you're going to buy before you have to think about it. And if we're thinking about it that way, do you still feel the same way about that change in the potential conversion rate? Or are you saying, okay, maybe the first conversion is harder to get, but the repeat conversions are potentially easier to get because every product that's being shown to that user is something they would potentially buy before they type anything into the search engine?
I guess it would come down to this though. And this is the difference. YouTube, I'm looking at it as that's not an entertainment. It's like I'm bored. Let me go to my app, and while my wife's in getting groceries, I'm going to scroll some YouTube, right? Entertain myself, educate myself, whatever. If I don't find myself going to Amazon, let's say, to just browse for random stuff. So I don't know if it's going to have the same effect as that. I understand the logic, but I don't know. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are, and again, it's primarily, I'm sure, women that are on Etsy. I don't know what the demographics are, but I'm pretty sure the last I checked, it was more Etsy was women than it was men. Are they going to go there like a Pinterest thing and kind of like just scroll to see what's new and then get suggested things and be like, oh, that's sweet, that's cool. So it's not so much on search. I don't know if that'll ever outperform search on a platform like Etsy or like Amazon or like eBay, right? You're going there looking for something. I'm not saying that there's not something there that while you're searching, you see recommendations for other things that might be of interest to you. But for people to just go there and browse, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it as the same. I don't see it as the same. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, and I think what they are telling us is there's essentially two major changes to what they're doing. The first thing is they're trying to eliminate what they consider to be duplicate search results.
Yep.
Right. So somebody on Google, if you go to Google and you type in how to feed a hamster and you get 7 articles in a row that are essentially the same thing, that's a duplicate search result. What Etsy is saying is one of the biggest complaints, both from buyers and sellers, is that they type something in, and because we're only using the conversion-based approach, they will see 7 listings or 10 listings that look fairly similar. So is there a way that we can incorporate the highest 1 or 2 likely products to be purchased from that search result, and then other things that they haven't thought about yet? And Scott, they went in the investor call, they went in a little bit to what they call demi-fine jewelry, where they're doing some additional search refinement, where they're giving you like pop-up bubbles to say, okay, you search this, did you actually mean this? And what they found was a lift in conversions and a lift in gross merchandise sales, just in that one specific category, right? And so if we're thinking about layering those two things together, that starts to make a lot of sense. And then once you get a little bit of data on somebody, when they come to Etsy, and most people, they're driving towards the app now because what they saw was browsing behavior turned into buying behavior there frequently. So you're not necessarily losing out if you're driving people to the app and giving them that experience and saying, hey, here's this really cool thing. Here's this really cool thing. Here's this really cool thing. In the background, you're still going to be reliant on conversion rate as a metric, right? They're not just going to show you something cool because they think it's cool. They're going to show you something cool because they think you're going to buy it. But they're going to be much less reliant on the words you type in and on the actual conversion rate of that product, because they're moving away from a keyword-based search and much more towards a recommendation engine. Because what they've seen over and over again is that doing direct text matching is very hard, especially with the diversity of things that Etsy has in the catalog. And so if they can figure out a better way to do associative matching, or figure out buying patterns, right? This person buys fishing stuff. Let's just keep showing them fishing stuff every time they come to the homepage. You're much more likely to turn any of that browsing behavior into actual purchase behavior. So they're moving away from that direct association and more towards an indirect association. As we start to see this, what do you think this means for sellers moving forward?
Well, I think it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity. But does it change anything? Does it change like the way that you're putting your listings together? Are you changing the way you're titling? Are you changing the way you're doing images? No, I don't really think that you are. So there's really not a lot of control. Only thing that I feel the control aspect is they're going to give us insight as far as how we are performing, and is our listing giving all of the data that the algorithm wants. And I think that's the big thing here for sellers to understand is when that rolls out, we want to pay attention to that, because that is clearly telling us these are the things that potentially could get you ranked higher, right? And it might even be to the point where it's like your conversion is 0.75. We would like to see you increase that. So what it's basically saying is there's other people selling here and they're converting higher than you. So let's try to get the conversion up. Well, here's some recommendations how to do that. Improve your image quality, improve your tags, like whatever, right? Like those are some things that might come into play. That's the more important piece here. The discoverability, the suggestions, like all that stuff is things I can't control. But what I can control is having a really, really good high quality image that when I do get shown up in these suggestions, hopefully, that people are going to see it, like it, and click on it.
I think for me, the immediate alarm bell trigger, whatever we want to call it, that went off in my head, Scott, is niche-based shops are going to have a huge advantage in that ecosystem. Why? Because that associative data all ties into each other. All of the listings are roughly about the same thing, right? All of the keyword data, which they're still going to use to some extent, even YouTube, who relies 80% on suggestions and discovery, uses that keyword data through the transcript, through the stuff that you put in the descriptions, right, to serve those videos to the right people. Niche-based stores are going to have a huge advantage because they're going to have the text that is all associated around that niche. They're going to have the buyer behaviors that are associated around that niche, right? Somebody who's into avocados is not buying something from a fishing store necessarily, right? They're going to go buy from the avocado store or whatever it is. Probably a terrible example because there's a big crossover there, but you guys get what I'm saying. If we have an everything store, we lose out on the extra metrics that we will get in a suggestion type of a system. When Etsy identifies that Scott is a big bass fishing fan, they're now going to start favoring even more than they already do from a personalization in the keyword-driven search results, something that they think he would buy based on his purchase history, based on his browse history, based on his interests. Right? The things he's signaling to Etsy he might be interested in, they're going to start showing him more of that before he ever gets to the search bar. The best way to take advantage of that, again, because they're not going to tell us exactly how to do it, is to make sure that everything we have is related. And if we can do that, then we can put ourselves ahead of the ball. And when we start to do some of the optimization stuff, when they theoretically give us a score on how to improve our stuff, which may or may not ever come out of beta, we're at least ahead of the curve here.
Yeah. I just want to bring up what Dream Talking with Vicky said. The quality of your listing. Yes. That's basically what we're saying. So yes. Awesome. So I think this was good. And I think that we covered everything. Was there anything else there that we needed to wrap up with, or are we good to go?
No, I think that was it. I mean, the big change is they're moving from keyword-based search and a conversion-based algorithm to a discovery and recommendations algorithm, because what they've seen is that they can do that and have more people showing up, a more diverse search result set, and potentially more frequent purchases. And the entire basis of that Q2 call was like, we're getting people to buy more, right? They announced their loyalty program last week, Scott, and we said, we wonder who this is for. In that call, we said, is this for the most frequent Etsy buyers or the one-time people? They actually said it's for the people in the middle, because they think that will actually drive them from buying twice a year to 5 or 6 times a year. Right. And so this entire call is about that. This change in the search algorithm is also about that. If they can show you without you having to search the products you are likely to buy because they know it's already something that you're interested in, then that's going to drive not just more traffic, more browse traffic, but more purchase activity, which is what Etsy as an entity is all about.
Cool. All right, let's move on. I know we got questions, but we're going to move on. If you have questions on that or even just feedback. I know there's a lot of people in there sharing just on, what they're doing for Q4, and there's a lot of good stuff going on in the comments. So thank you. Oh, and if you guys can do us a favor, if you're just tuning in, if you're getting value from this, go ahead and hit that like button. Give us a little love. We'd appreciate that. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do that because, it'll help us and you'll get some really good information. And actually tomorrow we have a special release that is going to be happening at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on this channel. It is, Chris and I going through 13 lessons and big takeaways after doing 27 Etsy shop audits. So that's going to be airing tomorrow. So look out for that. And if you're not yet subscribed, make sure that you subscribe. All right, cool. So let's get on with it. Wait a minute here. So Lady OZOS 59.
Lady
Scott, you're a
Oz.
bit blurry. What happened? I'm not quite sure what happened. Guys, am I still good or just curious? Am I blurry?
I'll look on the front end here.
Yeah.
I'll hear you twice, which is a terrifying prospect. But
and if I am, I don't know why my connection says it's strong. So, and I don't even have a warning from StreamYard, which is interesting.
Scott, while I'm double checking that, Diane said, "Hey, right, but you don't look for random stuff." Here's the deal. And if we think about YouTube as the example of that algorithm, when you go to YouTube, you don't feel like they're showing you random things because it's almost always on target, right? They do test some other things.
Yeah.
If you go to Etsy when they roll out the new version of the algorithm and you're seeing random stuff, they have failed at doing a good job of showing you the discovery type content.
Yep.
The whole point of that is that they're going to start looking at more behavior outside of the specific search intent to figure out what the things are you are likely to like. Is that a weird way of saying that? The things you are most likely going to be interested in, and serving those up to you before you have to figure out what the search is. It's the same reason they rolled out gift mode. They found that people had a terrible time trying to find things in Etsy search because there's so many different ways that people can search for things that they tried to cut down on that by using a little bit of machine learning and saying, hey, if you're into these things, and Scott, now thinking about those gift profiles, that makes a lot more sense, right? They're like, it's the groomsman dad, or all of those weird kitschy names that they had for things.
Yep.
If we start thinking about that as a persona, as a buyer persona, they're just lumping people into those groups in the background. And now they're saying, hey, if you're in this group, here's some things you might be interested in. That's all that they're doing. You look okay on the front end on my side.
Yeah, I have a bunch of people said looks great. So it could be on the lady, is it Oz? Lady Oz?
Lady Oz. Yeah.
Now it's better. So it could be on your end. Maybe the connection's trying to come in, and I don't know. But you said Chris was better. So I don't know. It's the internet. What are we saying here? It was funny. I was
up work consistently.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll share this real quick. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it kind of. We were on a flight one time, me and Kayla and my wife, my daughter, and we were watching the Yankee game, and we were up about 30,000 feet. And my daughter's like, why is it not coming in clear? And I go, maybe because we're 30,000 feet in the air. Maybe. I don't know. That could be the reason. I mean, here we are talking about like why we have a blurry image. So now the joke is always like when we're on an airplane and we're not getting good reception, we're like, why is it not working? Oh, maybe it's because we're 30,000 feet in the air.
You remember when there wasn't Wi-Fi on airplanes?
I remember when there wasn't phones, Chris. So, I mean, come on. I mean, I had a pager. I had a pager when I was working for my father, and I had, I saw a number and I had to go knock on the door and ask the customer if I could use their telephone, which was also either a rotary or a you had a push button one and you were really fancy. I know I'm sounding really old. I'm only 52, but I did live in that age. So pagers, LOL. Yeah, of course. All right, cool. Let's get on with it, Chris. We got a couple other things we want to discuss. Really important for Q4 as well. So let's get on with it. All right, so we are approaching Q4, depending on when you're watching this. And one of the big things that we are working on and that we're keeping front of mind is the use of Etsy ads. And I know a lot of people are either confused about Etsy ads, don't think they're ready for Etsy ads, and are not taking advantage of the Etsy ads. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to dig into and give you really 5 things to think about and to understand about Etsy ads, and really talking about a strategy for crushing Q4 sales, leveraging Etsy ads. So I've got Chris Schaefer on with me here, and we are going to cover these 5. Before I do though, Chris, can you explain just really randomly, like not randomly, but like, can you just explain the overall 10,000 foot view, Etsy ads, how they work, but then also we can lead into number 1 here and kind of kick this strategy off.
Yeah, so Etsy ads, Scott, the reason you and I love Etsy ads is it's an easy way to get early traffic, right? The Etsy SEO algorithm is great. I love free traffic as much as, if not more than, the next guy. But when we're talking about getting the data back as fast as possible, there's not a better way to do that than with Etsy ads. Yes, every time you create a new listing on Etsy, they do give you that new shiny listing boost to try to get all of the metrics that they need to figure out where you should fall in the organic search rankings. But they test that a little bit. They don't give you all of the data all at once, right? They don't just rank you number 1 to see what happens. They test you in a bunch of different places, and it takes 4 or 5, potentially even 6 months for them to really figure out where you fall versus all of your competition. By turning on something like Etsy ads for just a few dollars a day, and what we're talking about here, Scott, is not spending $1 million, but for the price of a cup of coffee, right? $3 to $5 a day, we can get all of that information. What keywords does Etsy think we're relevant for based on what we put on in our title, tags, and description? Which of those keywords, if any, are leading to clicks, and which of those keywords are leading not just to clicks, but also to sales. And there's not a better way to start to get that data back faster than by turning on Etsy ads and taking advantage of that traffic that we can get by just flipping that switch.
Yeah. So let's kick it off here, and let's go through like number 1. Okay. A lot of people ask, should I turn on my ads on everything? Like just turn them on. And the answer is no, you probably shouldn't. So the very first thing is we want to leverage the products that have the most demand. All right. So we want to turn on ads for the ones that have the most demand. What does that mean? What it means is the way that we do it is we always base our decision on what is going to bring a large traffic source in, right? Like a large amount of traffic into our shop. It's not just about the upfront sale, although we want that sale because when you get a sale from Etsy ads, it's also going to really do a lot of other things for your listing. It's going to get you sales, which will get you noticed in the algorithm. It'll also get you more reviews, which will help with conversions and all of that stuff. All right. But it's also going to bring people into your shop. And when you bring people into your shop, there's now a greater chance for them to buy more. All right. So one of the things in the very beginning, like we said, was turning on the ads and making sure that you turn them on early on the right products. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about. And if you're not yet doing that, or if you're nervous about running ads, I would say start there. And you can even start with a low budget, which we're going to talk about next. But before I do, Chris, why is it important in the very beginning not to turn on your ads for all of your products?
I think the biggest thing is just understanding what is working and what is not. And if we say have a $5 budget and we have 500 products, Etsy's trying to figure out how to spend $5 across those 500 different products. If we're moving into Q4, which we are right now, the best thing to do is if you're already running ads, leave on the things that are working really well, but focus on turning on ads for the things that will sell well next, right? So the very first thing before we move into Q4 is probably going to be something like Halloween, maybe Canadian Thanksgiving, depending on where you are in the world, right? And if we're talking about turning ads on early for that, typically that's going to be 60 to 90 days, Scott, before that holiday. On the shorter end, 45 to 60 is probably going to get you some of that data back early enough to know what's working and what's not. And the reason I'm not saying turn it on, the highest week of sales, right? So the first week of December, something like that, is you want to get the data back early so you know which keywords are leading to clicks and sales and which keywords are not, so that we can really spend that $5 or however much we're spending on ads the best way possible.
Yeah, well, you just moved into number 2, which is the second thing of this strategy is starting with a low budget. All right. Don't start with $20. Don't start with $50. Start with $5. All right. We like to use $5 as the starting point because that'll give us enough data and it will happen rather quickly if we did what we were talking about in number one. We have products that are in demand. One of the big things that we get from people that run this strategy is they're like, I'm trying to spend $20 a day, but I can only spend $1. Well, that tells me that the products that you're advertising are not in demand. There's not a lot of demand for those products. That's one sign that you're probably targeting the wrong product for a product that's going to lead people into your shop. We want to find those products. Our rule of thumb is generally, if you're just starting, 5 products that are in demand, and those would be good lead generators, if you will, or as we've said it in the past, like a lost leader in a sense, where you don't even make as much on that product, but it brings people into the shop. And if you're following our niche-based approach, where we have other products in that niche, now we increase our chances for people to see our other products. But the reason for starting for $5, it's not scary, and it's going to allow you to start getting that data instantly. All right. So $5 a day, that's what we're starting with. I also should say right now, I know that Etsy ads can be scary, and you might want to know, like, okay, what is the step-by-step then? That's kind of what we're giving you right here. But if you want a complete guide, we actually put together a free guide, our Etsy ad strategy, what we're covering here today, but we go deeper and we show you some screenshots and things like that. Go ahead in the comments and put ads. If you just type in ads in the comments, we'll make sure that we get you that guide, and it's free. Okay. So just put ads in the comments and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. So Chris, anything on the $5 other than what I just talked about, or should we move on to number 3?
Yeah, I think we just randomly picked $5, and that's the reason why people should do it. No, there's 2 concerns that people have, right? I don't want to spend too much, and you can cut that out by setting the budget at just a few dollars. About $5 seems to work for most sellers. And, I don't know, I don't want to spend it on the wrong stuff, right? I'm willing to spend $5, or I'm willing to spend $100 as long as it's on the right stuff. $5 is typically enough to get us the data back that we need. So we're going to start to see where we're getting impressions, where we're getting clicks, where we're getting sales, all of that stuff, without worrying about lighting our shirt on fire, right? We're going to get some early indications about which products and keywords are working for us and which products and keywords are not. And as we start to see what's working, then we can start to scale it. There's nothing wrong with adding more money in. But if you start with $20, you either run into you spend it all in 5 minutes camp, or you're not going to spend it because you missed something on the product research side. So what we found is $5 is typically enough for people to get that data back. And then as you start to scale, you can work on issues one at a time, as opposed to saying, I don't know why I didn't spend it, or I spent it all in 2 minutes. What happened? We can avoid that by starting with a small budget and then scaling up as we see things working.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay. So moving into number 3, and this one here is big because a lot of people will spend money on ads, and they're probably advertising more products than they should. So that's number 1. Make sure that you're targeting the right ones. Once you do that, okay, now we're spending $5 a day. We need to go in and do a little bit of data analysis. Okay. And we call it pruning. So this is where you're going to now go in, you're going to see data, you're going to see keywords that people are, that people are using to find your product through the Etsy ads. Okay. And so what we want to do now is we want to go through there and we want to see, are these relevant or are they not? And if they're not relevant, we want to turn those off. Now, Etsy says there's no guarantee by you turning that off that we're not going to show for that. But what it is going to do is it's going to start training the Etsy ads algorithm that we probably shouldn't show for this. Okay. So that's what we're going to want to do. Now, people are spending money because they're not doing this. They're spending money on clicks, because that's the only way that you get charged for Etsy ads, by the way, is by a click. You might be getting clicks on this one keyword that is not going to ever convert because it's very generic. We used, the example, if you're selling a wooden sign for, let's say, farmhouse kitchens, and you're coming up for wood and people are clicking on wood, it's probably not relevant. We want to turn that one off. All right. So this is a big one for you to be able to really start training the Etsy ads on what you're relevant for and what you want to concentrate that budget on. But then more importantly, you don't want to waste the money on these clicks. Okay. Because if you're getting a click, you're paying for it. And if it's on the wrong keyword or too broad of a keyword, that's going to cost you money. So we've actually done Etsy shop audits where we go through and we look at the Etsy ads manager, and we have found different ads or different keywords that were driving clicks that were never going to convert. So you're able to really prune those back and really prune the cost. And that's really also going to come down to sometimes being profitable and not being profitable. Chris, what did I leave out on pruning? Because I know that's a big one for you when you get in there and start digging through that data.
I know you look at the giant bush and you see a bush. I see a man riding a horse, right? Whatever it is, whether you're a landscaper or you're running Etsy ads, it's going to be the most important part of this process because Etsy goes a lot broader in the terms that they will show you for when you're paying for it. So they have a whole list of things they know you're directly relevant for, right? Coffee mug. This is a coffee mug, but it might also be a teacup. And they might not show you for that on the organic side because maybe you didn't put it in your title tags or description. But on the ad side, they know that those two things are essentially the same thing. And so they're going to show you for that on the ad side to see if it's something that converts for you. And if it does, then they expect that you'll continue to pay for the ads. The problem is they miss a lot of that. And actually in their most recent investor call, Scott, they said one of the biggest struggles that they have is understanding that connection between the buyer search intent and an ad that they have in inventory already. And we see that when we look at the keywords report. And so before we scale that budget up, that's again, a reason we talk about starting small. We want to look at what's working and what's not. The easy thing there is if they say that this is a soccer ball, obviously it's not a soccer ball. So we're just going to turn that off. But if they say cup, it could be a cup. How do we know if that's working or not? Well, is it leading to sales or does it have a likelihood of leading to sales? And Scott, I think the example that you just gave was talking about like kitchens, right? Or stuff, farmhouse kitchens and showing for wood. Wood is potentially relevant to that. But if we go to the Etsy search results and type in wood, is Etsy saying that that is relevant for that in the eyes of the buyer? Because Etsy is prioritizing those search results on likely to convert. So if you're seeing a lot of lumber and you're not selling lumber, that's a keyword you're going to want to turn off, even if it's potentially relevant. What we're looking for is the things that are the most relevant, meaning they're leading to clicks and sales, or that they have a high likelihood of leading to sales, meaning when we type that in, if we have a question about it, they're showing similar products to what we are selling.
Yeah, the one other thing I want to highlight here too is like this is a great time to get intel on your listing, and you can kind of see what you're being ranked for, what you're indexed for. So you can also kind of cross-check your optimization by looking at these keywords. Also, sometimes we've done this. Actually, we've done it for some of our students, and also for the Etsy shop audits that we've done. Sometimes we'll find product ideas by some of those searches that are coming through. So there's a lot of data that you can look at as well and learn from. All right, so moving on, Chris, I'm going to tee this one up for you. When should we be increasing the budget? Because that's another one. We went from $5. We're pruning. We're maxing out our budget. We're getting some sales. When do we scale up the budget? How much do we scale up on the budget? And once again, we do go over this inside of that guide in our Etsy ads guide. If you want a copy of that, just put ads in the comments and we'll make sure that we get you a copy. But Chris, what do we do there? How do we scale this up? And how much, how frequently, what do we do?
Well, I would say we go from 5 to 500 immediately, but that's probably not a smart choice. What we're looking at here, and the reason, Scott, that pruning was number 3 after getting started and setting that small budget is because we don't want to scale that budget until we know we have something that is working. And there's essentially 2 reasons that we might start to scale that budget. The first is we have optimized those keywords. So we've trimmed out all the dead wood. We turned that weird looking scraggly old bush into a man riding a horse, and our ads are optimized now. Now, what do? Well, we want to see if we can spend more money. So that's one reason to increase our budget. The other reason to increase our budget, again, after we're pruning out all of that dead wood, is to add in some more products. And this is especially powerful during Q4 because we're going to have some overlap in terms of that getting ads turned on between some of the different holidays, right? There's going to be some overlap between Halloween and Thanksgiving. There's going to be some overlap between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so if we're optimizing our budget, when we need to add more ads in, we're going to want to increase that budget as well, just to make sure that they start to get some of those impressions. So before you scale that at all, we need to make sure that we're cleaning that out. And then we need to think about, are we spending that budget wisely? And what is the reason that I'm increasing this? Is it because all of that $5 is being spent and it's turning into positive return on ad spend for me? Or do I need to add in some more products, and do I want to give Etsy a little bit of overhead so that I can get the data and keep spending what I'm spending? If either one of those 2 is the right answer, then you're good to go and you can start to scale it.
Cool. All right. And the last thing, and this is another thing that we see, but it's something that we, we definitely look at, and that is, when do you stop running the ads? Because what we see is people will prematurely turn off the ads because they're like, well, Scott, I'm getting organic sales. Why am I going to keep my ads still running? And we always ask, well, why wouldn't you want to show up twice? Right. So, Chris, why don't you elaborate on this and let people know, when should we be turning these off? And is there a time that we do turn them off?
Yeah, there's going to be a couple times, Scott, where I would suggest turning ads off, right? We've driven a few hundred people to that listing and no one has bought anything. We probably want to turn ads off and figure out what the problem is. And our number that we typically use for that is between 50 and 100 clicks, because we know that we should be getting a minimum of a 1% conversion rate. So that's thing number one, but that's more of a product by product basis. If we just can't get anybody to convert from ads, then we have a listing problem and we need to sort that out before we keep spending money on that listing. Thing number two would be, okay, we rank number one in organic search. I'm just going to turn ads off for that. We don't want to do that. And the biggest reason for that is that can reduce overall sales velocity, which is another part of what Etsy is looking at from a conversion standpoint, which means we can start to lose that organic rank. And you see it almost to a T. When people start to turn that off, they immediately go back and turn them back on because they see that organic rank starting to slip. In terms of actual holiday cutoffs, Scott, we shouldn't be turning it off, with the exception of two things happening. One, we're getting to the end of that buying season. So we think about Christmas, there's an obvious shipping cutoff for Christmas of like December 15th, maybe a little bit earlier. At that point, we can feel pretty comfortable turning Christmas ads off because we're not going to be selling many more Christmas things. Thing number two would be, if we are in over our heads and we just can't keep up with demand, then we can turn ads off on those products as well. And I know that's actually a strategy you and your wife employed last year during Q4, was to say, hey, we actually don't want as many sales right now because we're feeling like we're at the end of our rope. So we want to dial back that traffic. We can't really do anything on the organic side, but I can turn ads off and see what that does for us in the short term. So in terms of turning ads off for Q4, it would be when you get close to or on that holiday deadline, or if you just can't keep up with demand, feel free to turn them off. And then when you get caught up, turn them back on.
Yeah. And I would probably close with, when you are deciding to run ads, number one, you want to really understand that getting in front of your audience as fast as possible, Etsy ads is going to allow you to do that. And then getting the information back, looking at the data, that is all stuff that you're not going to get in any tool at all. Right. So there's a lot of things that come from running the Etsy ads, not just the sale. The other thing I will bring up, and we demonstrated this last year, we actually did a live stream on the numbers for this, but we were able to spend money on Etsy ads and then convert pretty well, but not as well as we did organically. But yet we got more sales organically because of the Etsy ads, because our sales velocity was up. We had more reviews, and all of that drives it. So I would really encourage people and you to basically give Etsy ads a try, but understand them. And if you understand them, you're going to learn, and you're going to be able to dial up sales, but also you're going to be able to dial up your organic side and your search. And you're also going to be able to really get ahead of the curve when you're heading into the holidays. So that's what I would say there. If you want a copy of our Etsy ads guide, like I said, in the comments, put ads and we'll send you over a copy of that. But I would definitely encourage you to start using ads, at least test them and see if you can make them work for you. All right, Chris, we got one more, which is on Etsy ads, and it was 3 mistakes we wanted to cover. They're similar to what we just went over, but we're going to go deeper into a couple of those areas. Chris, you want me to tee everything up and I can really throw it your way on those? Do you have them handy?
Yeah, I can pull those up.
All right, cool. Get them ready, and I'm going to go ahead and tee it up for you. All right. And guys, if you have any questions on this, drop them in the comments. We have a bunch starred. We'll allow maybe 10 minutes, and we're going to go ahead and do rapid fire, and we'll answer some of them. And once again, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with us. If this has been valuable to you guys at all, well, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and we'd appreciate that. All right. So here we go. There are 3 Etsy ads mistakes that we are seeing, especially moving into Q4. And I wanted to share these with you today because I want you to win in Q4. So to do this with me, I'm going to have Chris Schaefer come in now, and we are going to cover 3 of these Etsy ad mistakes. And the very first one, Chris, I know that you're going to probably want to explain in much more detail, but that is waiting to turn on ads. Why is this a mistake?
So this is a mistake, generally speaking, right? People say, I need to wait until I have 10 products, or I need to wait until my product has been up for 2 months to turn on Etsy ads. And any time of the year, I would say that is a mistake, because one of the biggest reasons that turning Etsy ads on, especially turning them on early, is important is we get all of the data that we need to know if we set the listing up correctly, and if Etsy understands what our listing is about and is putting it in front of the right customers. In terms of Q4, Scott, the reason this is even more important is we're operating on a shorter time frame, right? We can't worry about 4, 5, 6 months worth of organic data coming in for Etsy to figure this out. We need Etsy to understand immediately what our listing is about, and we need to know immediately what is working. So what a lot of people will do is they'll say, hey, the hot buying season for Halloween is 3 weeks before. I'm just making this up, guys. 3 weeks before Halloween, so I'm going to wait until 3 weeks before Halloween to turn my ads on. The problem with that, and this will tie into issue number 2 or mistake number 2, Scott, is that we don't get the chance to learn anything. If all we're doing is turning those on exactly when we need them, we are immediately getting dumped into the algorithm. We're getting dumped into the ads at the highest cost per click point, right? Because everybody wants to run ads at that point in time. And we haven't learned what's working and what's not. And so whether it's Q4 or any other time, my suggestion would be as soon as you publish that listing, get it up. In Q4, we want those running 60 to 90 days before that holiday buying season ends.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad that you basically elaborated on that. The second mistake that we're seeing is people are wasting money on ads, not intentionally, but there's something that they should be doing that they're not doing to basically save themselves money and actually convert higher. And what might that be, Chris?
You know, this is one of my favorite topics, Scott, and it's looking at what's working and doing more of that and stopping what's not, right? This is like 80, 90% of business is doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. Not paying attention to what's going on with your ads is the biggest reason we get from people. And the biggest thing that we see when people say, hey man, my Etsy ads aren't working, what's the problem? You say, you realize you're spending 90% of your budget for a fidget spinner and you don't sell a fidget spinner, right? Why does that happen? The biggest reason that happens is because Etsy broadens what they show you for into a lot of related things when you are running ads, because they want to give you as much reach as possible while still keeping it relevant. So if you're not paying attention to your ads and you're not doing what we refer to, Scott, as pruning, which means going in, looking at the keywords that Etsy is showing your ads for and saying, that's not relevant at all. This is not a fidget spinner. This is a dancing avocado mug. Or, hey, I'm not sure if this is relevant. Maybe I should look at what people mean when they type this in. You're losing a lot of money that way. What we're looking for here, ideally, is a keyword that makes sense with our listing, leads to clicks, and leads to sales. If it's leading to clicks and not sales, then we have to figure out, Scott, what is the reason for that? Is it because my listing is wrong, or is it because the keyword is wrong? And both of those answers, whether it's your listing or the keyword, is something that people miss out on when they're not paying attention to their ads. Not only are you wasting money in either of those situations, but you're potentially missing out on a lot of organic sales if your listing is the problem. So how do we know? We take a look at that keyword. It's leading to a lot of clicks coming into our listing. Okay, is it relevant? Is it a dancing avocado mug? If so, then it's probably a listing problem. If it's not, if it says fidget spinner, then it's a keyword problem and we turn it off. If it falls somewhere in between and it says mug, then we're going to go to Etsy, type in mug, and see what Etsy thinks people mean when they type that search in. And if it's products like the ones we're selling, then we can leave it on for a little bit and see what happens. If it's not, then we turn it off because we know it's not relevant and all of those clicks aren't going to be relevant traffic for us. And I think the biggest issue I see here is not only are they missing out on that data, but you lose out on the ability to start to scale the ads because you're losing 40, 50, 60, in some cases, 70% or more of that ad spend to some of those potentially related or unrelated keywords. And so before we raise our budget, which is a big mistake that we see people making. They say, oh, I just need to spend more to get more back from ads. We need to prune back to see where we're wasting money and where we're losing out on conversions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's real good. And which actually kind of leads me into the last mistake, which is a little bit big, a little bit bigger, I should say. And that is not thinking about the long term or the big picture. And I'm going to elaborate on this because there's two areas that I want to address here. And the first thing is understanding how sales helps rank organically. I see the mistake where a lot of people only look at what did I get for putting the dollar in? Did I get my dollar back? That's what they're looking at. And the way that we look at it is I put a dollar in, I might have got 80 cents back. Okay. Cost me 20 cents to get that customer. Okay. Am I able to sell them something later? Did that help me increase the order size? Right? Because what people don't realize is if someone comes in on that one product and then they've added 2 other products, we've increased the value of that cart order. Now we're not just wasting 20 cents. We've just made $5 or 10 or 20, right? And we've got a customer. So thinking about it more on a long-term play than just what is that one sale, that one transaction. And that's why we're big on creating a brand around a niche. So this way here, you have more chances for that customer to buy more, whether it's at time of purchase or at a later date. Okay. So that's the one big thing there with just like not thinking about like long-term and big picture. Okay. The other one is you're targeting products that don't have enough demand. And what I mean by that is like you're putting $5 on your budget and you're wondering why you're not spending the $5. The reason why is most likely because either your listing isn't optimized properly for the right keywords that are getting traffic, or you are optimized and there just isn't a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of people searching for that. So that would be an indicator that your products don't have enough demand, which means that you have a very little chance of traffic coming to it, which will then make it also harder for you to sell stuff, right? So that to me is like seeing the big picture as far as how ads actually work for your business and not just looking at, I'm spending $1 to sell this mug, and if I don't turn a profit on this, I've lost. So that's the big mistake that I think a lot of people are making is they're not seeing the big picture. And Chris, I know that we have a guide for people that walks through our strategy. It'll also kind of explain this a little bit further. If you guys want a copy of that, just put ads in the comments and we'll make sure that we get you a copy of that. Once again, ads in the comments and we'll send you a free copy of our guide. Chris, do you want to elaborate a little bit on the big picture that people are missing here?
Yeah, why not? I think the biggest issue for me, and there's really 2 places where this hits home, right? The big picture is people say, hey, ads aren't working. And I think a lot of them immediately are making mistake number 2. And this is something, Scott, that you and I see all the time is you're like, yeah, it's not working because you're wasting 80% of your spend. And if you went in and clicked that button right there, like just toggle that little toggle on that keyword, you'd be making a 6-to-1 return on ad spend. Right. But outside of that, people miss the big picture. They say, hey, I'm making a profit or I'm break even with my ads. I'm just going to turn them off. Or maybe, Scott, I rank number 1 in organic search. So why would I keep running ads? It doesn't make any sense. And our snarky response to that is typically, wouldn't you rather show up twice than just once? Right. But the real reason that we get snarky about that is that ad sales help us rank organically. Not necessarily directly, right? Etsy isn't like, oh, they're making sales on ads, let's rank them higher organically. But all of the indirect ranking factors that Etsy uses come as a result of that. When we're looking at the Etsy ads data, we get to know which keywords are working and which aren't. If they're performing on ads, there's a good likelihood they're performing on organic. If they're not working for us on ads, there's a good likelihood that they're not working for us on organic. The Etsy buyer doesn't necessarily know the difference. And so we can get a lot more data than we ever could before about the specific keywords and how people perceive our listings. That lets us go in and optimize our listings. Maybe we make some tweaks to the titles. Maybe we change the tags, the description, the images, which is the biggest thing for most people. And by getting as much data back as possible, not only are we going to optimize our ads, but by optimizing them through that process, we're also optimizing on the organic side. And so we're reliant on that keyword data and the conversion data coming from Etsy ads because we get that much faster than we ever would on the organic side. And quite honestly, even up until the fact that they're now getting the beta search terms report out of beta, it's still more comprehensive data because it shows us exactly where in the process that we're failing potential Etsy customers. And driving that higher organic rank, driving more sales, whether they're coming from organic or from ads, is what starts that whole Etsy flywheel going. The more traffic and sales we have, the more traffic and sales Etsy typically will reward us with, both at the listing and at the store level. And I think, Scott, that ties into thing number 2, which is how in-demand products really increase shop traffic. And if we're thinking about driving traffic, even if we don't make $35 on that first sale, right? Because our ads are optimized, but we're not making the return on ad spend that we want, or we're using it as a loss leader type of a product because we know that there's a lot of traffic, that still allows us to start that Etsy flywheel going. And more importantly, it starts the customer flywheel going by running ads, even on products that we're not massively profitable on. We're able to build our customer base. And this is something you and I are extremely passionate about. We know that it's easier to sell something to someone who has purchased from us in the past than it is to sell to a random stranger. Not only does it cost us less money, but they convert at a higher rate. And so even if we don't make our dream profit on the products we're running Etsy ads through, then we're still building that customer base, which means we're building repeat sales, which is not only something we as store sellers want, but it's also something that Etsy is starting to emphasize really heavily as well. So obviously, and I think you would agree with me on this, Scott, you're not an advocate of just lighting money on fire. And so if you have a product that you just can't get to work with Etsy ads, feel free to turn it off. But if it's working even a little bit, and you can do a little bit of pruning around the edges, or you can figure out a way to make it break even or better, I would say leave it on, because you're going to get all of those downstream benefits. You're going to get the conversion data back. You're going to understand what's working and what's not on the organic side, and you're going to really start to build that customer base.
Cool. All right. So I think we drove the point home about Etsy ads. We love them and we use them, and we're going to be using them this year and probably next year and the year after. And as we get closer, even last year we did a couple of tests and we ran $500 a day, and we didn't spend $500 a day, but we ramped it up just to test that. And we even did $1,000 a day. Didn't spend that. I think the most that we spent in a day was about 150. And that was at its peak. So even though you are willing to spend, doesn't mean you will spend. Now, again, if I was trying to spend $100 and I couldn't spend that during the holidays, I'd think I'd had a demand issue. But with that all being said, guys, hopefully that helped you guys. We do have a bunch of questions in here, Chris. We can probably do a little rapid fire here on some questions. This one here I want to pull up because it's relevant to what we were just talking about. Janae, what's up, Janae? She was one of our Etsy shop audits, her and her daughter, and hopefully all is well. If your ad is getting 50 to 100 clicks, over what amount of time would you consider turning ads off per day, per month? The question wouldn't be how long I got there. The question would be, did I get there? Right. So if I know, Chris, you said 50 clicks, 100 clicks. I would probably say that, and we're not talking like at a keyword level, we're talking like overall for that product. So I would say if I'm running a test, I probably would go as much as 75 to 100 clicks. 100 would be like ideal, because then I'm like, okay, if I have 100 clicks, and 100 clicks on average going to be 20 cents, 30 cents a click, you're going to spend 20 or 30 bucks to get 100 people to view that listing. Well, you're basically paying $30 to test to see how well it will convert, right? So I would say if I can spend 30 bucks to get 100 clicks, and then out of those 100 clicks, if I can convert at 1%, it's not going to pay for my 30 maybe fully, but it's going to give me good data. And there could be me spending that 30 bucks. I might have only had to spend 10 because I haven't pruned yet. Right. So I would say 100 clicks would be kind of like the metric I'm looking at. I'm not looking at how long did it take. I'd be more or less looking at, like, if I'm advertising and I'm only getting 100 views a day, then that might take a long time to get those 100 clicks. Then we might have a demand issue or an optimization issue.
Right. And we typically advise the 1% rule for Etsy ads as a baseline, right? A 1% click-through rate and a 1% conversion rate as a
Yeah.
baseline. If you're doing worse than that, there's probably something wrong. If you're doing better than that, awesome. Right. So if we're talking about 100 views per day to get to 100 clicks, that would be 100 days. You just made the math really easy. There's somebody at me for my terrible math in the chat, right? And what we're not necessarily looking for like statistical significance here. What we're
Right.
looking for is a good indication. And 100 clicks is a really good indication. 75 is a pretty darn good indication. 50 in most cases is going to be enough for us to say, were these 50 relevant? Because if it was all on cup and I'm selling a fidget spinner, then they weren't relevant. If it's all on wood, you know, if it falls into one of those two categories where it's like, we should probably turn those off, then it's not enough at that point. We turn those off and we wait for the relevant clicks to come in. If they were all for dancing avocado coffee mug and we haven't sold one yet, then we have a listing issue. It's not a traffic issue. It's not because Etsy ads don't work. It's because you did something incorrectly on the listing. So it's not about the time, although that does give us an interesting indication, Scott, like you said, on the views side of the popularity of the product. And if I'm running Etsy ads and seeing 1 impression a day, that tells me one of two things. Either I massively missed the keyword or there's not any demand for that product. And both of those are good lessons to know sooner rather than later. And guess what? They're free, because if no one is clicking on your Etsy ad, you're not paying anything for it. So you get to pick up a lot of that data for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and so before we move on here, guys, we got a few more minutes to answer some questions. I'd like to ask you guys, we are going to be doing these live streams through Q4. Is there any topics or trainings or anything that you would like us to go deeper in? What areas, whether it's product research, niche research, whether it's sub niching, whether it's SEO, whether it's Etsy ads, email, let us know in the comments. What would you like to see for a future live stream? All right. So let us know. All right. So this one here, I'm going to answer real quick. How important are shop sections? Not that important from a SEO, like, conversion, probably not. What it is it's a user experience. So when we get someone into our shop, is that going to help them navigate it easier? Yes, that is where I would say it would be important, because then you're going to be able to, it's almost like having a store, but you don't have any signs for the aisles, right? But it's like, if you go in a store and you see, oh, aisle 2 is peanut butter, I'm going to go to aisle 2, right? So, I would say it's more about the user experience there. Let's see here. Neri, Scott and Chris, how much paragraphs do you recommend to have in the description? As many as you need. I don't think there's a set amount. I think it just needs to explain and describe, and you're good to go. Like, don't overthink that. Yeah, there's
basically 3 things you need to cover, right? What is the product? Who's it for? And what's it made of? Right. So it's a dancing avocado mug. It's ceramic, and it's for people who love drinking tea and avocados, right? We can expand that out and get into more detail, but as long as we're covering our bases there, it's as much as you need to explain those things. Some products will require more explanation than others. I would also be careful with that wording. I know you said paragraphs. Typically wouldn't write in a paragraph format. Couple lines, especially because Etsy is heavily emphasizing the mobile app. So if it's more than about 2 lines on desktop, you probably want to throw a line break in there. Don't at me, grammar Nazis. I know the way that I write and the way that you write, Scott, sets my dad off, because he's a big, like, typical English paragraph guy. We're writing for the internet. We're writing for people who are buying our stuff. We're not writing for our 4th grade English teacher. So let's make sure that we're doing it in a readable format. And that seemed to be the biggest thing, was that if people can read and understand the description and you're accurately describing the product, that's what they care about more than the overall length. And taking up every character Etsy gives you doesn't necessarily give you an outsized benefit. There's no reason just to repeat dancing avocado over and over again to try to rank higher. That's just silly, and they ignore it anyway. Are there items, the items you get the most impressions and click through on Etsy ads, the ones you want to make your loss leaders? Are those the ones we should run more dramatic discounts on to get traffic? What are your thoughts on this, Scott? How do you choose what your loss leaders are?
Well, again, okay. So yes, looking at impressions and looking at views, right? Like, so impressions are one thing. People actually clicking in is another. So I would say, if it's converting, like if I'm spending money and it's not converting, then no, that's not going to be a loss leader. But yes, that might be like something to look at to try to get it to convert. Because if you get someone in on that product and they do buy, well, now you have to remember we have the opportunity of making them or part of our customer base. We can sell them potentially later. So I think it really comes down to, though, as far as if you're getting clicks, are you getting sales? Because if you're getting sales, then it would be like, okay, I'm getting sales, but I'm not profitable. Now the question becomes, do I keep running that as a loss leader? But if we're just getting impressions and views, but no sales, then we're probably we're gonna rethink that. So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it's not. If we could get away with never having a loss leader, that's ideal. The reason we're running promotions is just to incentivize that conversion sooner, right? As we start to get more conversions and more data through it, we can start to reduce that. Bonnie, for email, I'm trying to collect email, but not sure what I'm doing or what to write or where to get emails out of the Etsy platform. So I will say you shouldn't be getting emails out of the Etsy platform. Let's just be careful with that language. We shouldn't be taking anything from Etsy. People should be giving us their emails willingly. And Scott, I believe there's a resource for that. So how can people get their hands on that step-by-step guide?
Yeah, just put email in the comments and we'll send you a guide. It'll walk you through how we collect emails a couple of different ways, but the one way is we run giveaways externally. And then also, and I explained it here, so you might want to go back and listen to this live stream because it will be a recording. But it's really the breakdown of how to collect emails and do it within the terms of service, getting permission by setting up a landing page in Everbee email. From there, creating yourself a link or a usable link by getting a domain name from a place like GoDaddy, and then putting that in your listing or in your thank you email that Etsy allows us to send on our behalf, and then inviting them to our VIP club. But again, we cover that inside of the email playbook that we have. So if you want that, just in the comments, put email and we'll send you that. What else we got here, Chris?
We had a follow-up because we were talking about clicks and how many clicks. So if I'm running Etsy ads, how many views should I be looking at to know that there's not a demand issue? I feel like my products are in demand from my research, but I'm not sure. And I would say it's the same kind of a thing with clicks. We want to see at least a couple hundred views before we can make that. And that is where the time thing plays into that. So Scott, do you have a general rule of thumb where you'd say if it's 100 views over 100 days, obviously that's not enough, but what is the kind of benchmark that you would say you would want to see?
Yeah, I would say as far as like impressions, I want to see thousands and not just a couple of hundred. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen immediately. So you have to give it time. And that's why in our little Etsy ads guide, we talk about giving it, 5 to 7 days, right? We want to give it time because Etsy has to figure out too, who this is for. Right. So we want to give it time. But I would say if you did this for 5 to 7 days and you got like 300 views, or not even views, impressions, then I'd be like, either I missed the mark on the keyword, like Chris just said, I missed the mark. It's not the right keyword. And then what I would do is I would go to the product that you did research on that's selling like crazy. And I'd look and see, what are they using for their keywords, right? Like what is their main title, right? If it's a garden lover apron and you don't have garden lover apron in there, you might want to put that in there, right? So that would be something I would look at. But I would say if I'm looking at this and you've been running ads for a week or two and I don't see a few thousand impressions, then I'm going to pretty much say we got something wrong or there's just not enough demand.
Yeah. And the answer is you have to look at the data, right? It all comes back to the data. And again, the impressions data is, say it with me now, free, right? Yeah. It's not something that we're paying for until somebody clicks. So it's a great way to stress test a product to make sure we got the listing right. Even if we're not sure once we get through the product research, we always should be paying attention to that. And one last one I saw sneak in here, Scott, what's the deal with the limit on Etsy pay-per-click? Why is my limit down to $1 a day? I can't get it higher. So Etsy actually came through and they said one of their biggest concerns is that some people are spending way too much. They have way too much of a budget, and so many Etsy sellers have way too little of a budget. So they're using a little bit of AI to say, hey, here's what we think you should be spending at your size. And if you're spending it wisely, and you are spending it, then we will start to increase that. So typically what you will see when Etsy either increases the amount that you're able to spend through Etsy ads or decreases is that it's because something is out of whack. So either they're seeing that you're consistently spending that $5 a day and they said, hey, you're doing pretty good with this. We think you should probably raise it to 10, or you can put it anywhere in between, maybe $100 a day. If they're bringing it down, it's typically because you have a budget that's entirely too high. They're showing you and you're not getting those clicks when they are showing you. And so what I would say is, you probably have a relevancy issue. If you are getting clicks, like you are spending that $1 and it's not turning into a ton of sales, or they're trying to show you for a lot of different things and you're not getting the click-through rate they think you should have, they can reduce your budget as a way of saying, hey, we don't want to show you as much because we don't think that you are as relevant. Even though you're paying, it's actually reducing the user experience on the backside. And so it's another thing that they were doing in order to reduce the number of duplicate search results, as well as they were saying, hey, if all of these products look exactly the same, we're not going to allow as many ads or as many similar ads being run, because that's an easy lever for them to pull. So if you have a budget issue, it's probably because you have a conversion rate or a relevance issue on what you're running those ads for.
Yeah. One last thing I'll just say, I just actually peeked and I wanted to see if our budget had gotten reduced. It has. So we were as high as $1,000 last year. Right now, our limit is $200. And the reason why, like I said, Chris, or like you just said, the AI probably went in there and saw that we didn't really spend more than $200 last year. So it probably said, let's reduce that down to what your budget should be. And so we'll see, because as we get ready here, as we get into Q4, I'm going to stress test that budget. I'm going to go ahead and put it to $200 for the day, and I'm going to see what the heck happens. And they might increase it, even though I don't spend $200. We'll see. I think that'll be a good test. So stay tuned for that. And another reason why you want to probably stick around and subscribe to the channel. So there's a little call to action. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, because we got a lot of cool stuff coming. And speaking of that, we got one thing coming tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. on this channel. And it is it's a video Chris and I just recorded. And it's from 27 Etsy shop audits that we've done to date. We're going to be doing another 27 for the rest of the year. We've got more in the queue here. But we have learned 13 things from these 27 Etsy shop audits that we did. And we distilled them down, and Chris and I shared them. And that will be coming out tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So if you want to get early access to that, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. You'll be notified, unless YouTube doesn't notify you, but I'm pretty sure they will. Maybe you got to click that little bell thing too. Yeah, do that too. Click that bell. But other than that, Chris, I think that about wraps her up. Anything else you got to add, or are we good?
I think we're good.
We're good to go. All right, guys, that is going to wrap it up. We got a lot of resources we mentioned here. You can get access to all of those if you just go into the description. We'll go ahead and make sure that we link everything up. We want to wish you guys all the best of luck. And if you have any suggestions for topics for future live streams that we do every Wednesday, by the way, here, 12 p.m. Eastern time, another reason why you want to subscribe. Give us some suggestions, give us some feedback. What would you like to see more of? Just let us know. We're here to help you guys. All right. We want you guys to win in Q4. So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. As always, take care, take action, have an awesome, amazing day. We'll see you right back here in the next episode. Take care, guys.